Good morning. This is the public hearing, public meeting of June 27th. Chair Srinivasan.
Here.
Commissioner Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi. Here. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Voss.
Here. Good morning, Commissioners. This morning we have one item on our research agenda that we're very excited about. LP 2593, 8602 Broadway, Old St. James Episcopal Church, also known as Old St. James Parish Hall, Queens, Block 1549, Lot 1. Item proposed for Commission's calendar, a wood frame church constructed in 1735 to 36 as a Church of England mission church and modified in 1883 with Carpenter Gothic details. Borough of Queens, tax map, block 1549, lot 1 in part.
Good morning. I'm Mary Ann Hurley, research staff, and here to present for calendaring the Old St. James Church, located in Elmhurst, Queens. It was built in 1735-36 and is historically significant for its association with the early colonial settlement of Queens and with the beginnings of the Protestant Episcopal Church in New York. It's architecturally significant as an early 18th century timber-framed building originally built like a New England meeting house and updated in 1883 with Carpenter Gothic details. Founded in 1652, Newtown, shown on the map to the left in red, well, actually the village is in the red, Newtown is the larger area, was among the first 5 towns established in Queens County. Early settlers of different denominations in Newtown Village shared community buildings and ministers for religious services. But that changed in 1735 when the Church of England built a mission church for the Anglican community, today's Old St. James. The church sits on its original site in the heart of Newtown Village, now Elmhurst, and is shown in the 1873 map to the right, labeled Old Episcopal Church. Its entrance faces Broadway at the intersection with 51st Avenue, but on this map it's actually labeled Cook. This is actually 51st. And here's the village as it was in the 1600s. Here are illustrations of Old St. James Church in its meeting house form. The drawing on the left depicts its earliest appearance, a simple box with round arched windows, wood shingles, and an attached tower and steeple. Today's Broadway would be to the right, and today's rear addition would be where the tower was. The drawing on the right shows the church viewed from the opposite direction from today's Broadway. It depicts the building in 1773 after an additional bay was added and its tower and steeple were remodeled. Old St. James Church building was spared by the British during the Revolutionary War. And after the war, the parish became one of the earliest in the newly formed New York Episcopal Diocese. Shown here is Newtown Village in 1850. Near the center of the drawing is the 1735 Old St. James Church, with its tower and 3 bays of windows. In 1848, the parish constructed a new St. James Church, shown in the upper left, with 2 towers. And Old St. James Church then became a parish hall. In 1883, after a storm toppled the West End Tower and steeple, the parish renovated the church and updated its style with Carpenter Gothic details, including the gable end truss, pointed arch windows within the original round arched openings, decorative roof brackets, and drip molding. They also added a shed roof porch and a small rear addition that replaced the damaged tower. These changes reflected the preference at that time for Gothic styling for Episcopal churches, and only a very small number of these small Carpenter Gothic churches remain in New York City. During the 20th century, the building continued to serve the parish and the community as a meeting hall. By the 1970s, asbestos shingles covered the historic wood shingles, and the building lost some of its decorative trim. But in 2004, the exterior was restored to its 1883 appearance, minus the shed roof porch. This was done with the help of grants from the Landmarks Conservancy and other sources. The proposed landmark site is a lot in part, shown in red above. The west section of the lot is paved and used for parking, as shown in the two photos at the right. This part is not included in the proposed landmark site. This 280-year-old, and I repeat, 280-year-old wood frame church, which retains both 18th and 19th century character and historic fabric, is New York's second oldest religious building and the oldest colonial-era Church of England building still standing in the city. So we, the research staff, recommend that the Commission calendar it for consideration as an individual landmark.
Thank you, Marianne, for a very complete presentation. And are there any questions or comments? But I think its distinction is clear, and I think Marianne noted the enormous amount of significance that this building has in telling New York's story, and it really is amazing that it exists today. It's really a fascinating aspect of it, that it's a very old building. So if there are no other comments or questions, yes?
What's the condition on the interior?
I don't know the condition of the interior because I haven't been inside, but according to the National Register nomination that was done in 1999, at that point it still had some of its 1700s woodwork. They had just kept it through the 19th century. And supposedly it's there today.
And it's still used as a parish hall? Or?
I'm not quite sure how it's used today. It looked like there was some activity around the rear doors when I was there taking photos, but I don't really know how the parish is using it.
At the moment, it's empty and it's not being used. Yeah. Yeah.
I did a condition assessment of this building about 25 years ago, and there is a considerable amount of the 18th century finishes still inside. It's a remarkably beautiful building.
Great. Yes, so, yes.
Last question. Did you say this is the second oldest church?
Pardon me?
Did you just say this is the second oldest church?
It's the second oldest church religious building.
Religious building.
Right.
And which is
that I'm aware of.
Okay. Which is the oldest?
The oldest is the Quaker Meeting House in Flushing.
Flushing. I should have known.
All right. So with that, I make a move to calendar this property. All in favor? Any opposed? Old St. James Church is now calendared, and we will, our research staff will work on this, and then we will have a public hearing fairly shortly. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, the first item on the Preservation Department agenda is an application for Certificate of Appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, docket number 19-12025. This is 841 through 847 St. Nicholas Avenue, Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill, Northwest Historic District. This is a vacant lot, and the application is to construct a new building.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bernadette, Preservation Department staff. This application is 841 through 847 St. Nicholas Avenue in the Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill Northwest Historic District. So here's this historic district map. The building is on the northwest corner of St. Nicholas Avenue and West 152nd Street. Currently, there is a vacant lot. The historic district features numerous apartment buildings of 5 and 6 stories, as well as some smaller row houses that date to the late 19th century. And the applicants will go through the proposal.
Good morning. My name is Micah Hunter. I'm not the applicant, but I'm with the Department of Housing Preservation and Development at HPD. I'm here to let you know today that with our support, this project will be 100% affordable, providing 39 units for low-income residents of the Harlem community and New York City. For example, rents for a one-bedroom apartment will range from $605 to just over $1,000 a month. We expect to close on financing in 2 days, on June 29th, which is this Thursday, actually, to meet the mayor's annual goals for under the Housing New York plan to create 200,000 units, affordable homes for low-income New Yorkers over the next 10 years. We hope that this project can be approved today, and thank you for allowing us to speak on the project's behalf. Thank you. And I'll let Shaniqua take over.
Good morning. My name is Shaniqua Henry. I'm the architect for the proposed development at 847 St. Nicholas Avenue. So as stated previously, our proposal is located within the Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill Northwest District. And so if we go back, we see on the left slide that what we have is along St. Nicholas, we have two existing 6-story, or one existing 6-story and then one 7-story at the corner of 153rd and St. Nicholas. And our project is along 152nd and St. Nicholas. And then adjacent to our site on 152nd Street is a 5-story apartment building. So the district basically goes from 155th to 150th between St. Nicholas Place and Amsterdam. And if we look at the left slides, we'll see that the site was previously a group of row houses, and with the corner having a distinct row house at the corner that kind of, even though it was in the similar material, it was still kind of set apart, given its lot width and also the height of the project. And then along to the right, you see the district as it is today. And you see the 6-story masonry and brick building along St. Nicholas apartment building. And then across, you'll see a series of 4-story row houses. So the neighborhood characteristic today consists of 19th century row houses, as shown on the lower right, and then 20th century apartment buildings towards the left side. Then what we are doing is we are drawing inspiration from the neighborhood. So if you look at the upper photos, you'll see that on the adjacent, that on 155th Street, what we have is you'll see examples of corner storefronts where within the residential district and within residential buildings, you'll see at the lower floors, you'll have, at the lower first floor, you'll have a limestone base with a corner storefront. And then you can also look at the mixed use of materials where typically what we have is, if you go to the lower photos, you'll see a limestone base that sits at the first floor, and then it starts to break up as you approach kind of more the shaft of the building. It starts to break up into the brick coursing. And one of the things that we were inspired to do is kind of use that similar corbelling that we see of the brick that is at the second floor. And then also, if you look at the horizontal bands that exist typically at the first floor, second floor, and then across the top of the building, you can see that in the fifth image in the lower middle, and then the upper image on the right. So then what we also did is we went through the neighborhood and we drew examples of the brick corbelling and coursing within the district that you see. So if you look at the building, this building I think is on 153rd Street in St. Nicholas, and you'll see they do this kind of in and out rustication of the brick that's approximately 1 inch, and that's exactly what we're doing on our building, where we're setting the brick in and out at the second floor, and then as well to distinguish it at the corner. And then also the upper right image is a view of typical railing styles that you see in front of the residential buildings, which are usually set back in back of an areaway, and then the railing is usually about 3 to as much as 5 feet. So this is our proposed elevation, and so you can see that what we have is at the first floor, which is 12 feet high, we have at the corner the Dance Theater of Harlem space, which we are wrapping that corner in glass. And then we have the residential entrance to the building adjacent to it in the center at the first floor. And then at the first floor, we tried to create a pretty strong base by using a precast stone to kind of mimic limestone with a similar coursing to the adjacent building. So those courses are 1'4" high, and then they have a 4-inch inset. And then the strong horizontal course that is at the top of the first floor, then at the top of the second floor, and then at the top of the fifth floor. So then we're also proposing a double hung window that you see throughout the district, as well as a black cornice, and then we set the building back at the 7th floor. So this way at the front of the building, it's pretty close in alignment to the building to the north along 152nd Street. So you'll see that at the front face, the 6 stories at the front face, and then that upper portion is set back a good 15 feet to 20 feet. So then along the 152nd Street facade, we pretty much wrapped the same treatment that we had on St. Nicholas. So as far as horizontally, we wrapped it, but then that brick coursing, the in and out brick coursing, we took it up to accentuate that corner, similar to what you saw in the row house design, where the corner was kind of set apart from the other homes. And then as you walk down the residential street along 152nd Street, that's where we picked up that black railing, and we kind of set back the residential units slightly from the front corner portion. So this is a side elevation. So at the back of the building, we're proposing to use stucco, and we've wrapped that brick all the way down 152nd Street and around and back 10 feet. So this way you'll see the brick, the stone coursing returning back 10 feet from the street facade. And then we'll start with a stucco treatment that it's called red brick, that is similar to the brick color. So the gray is just showing that the building is attached to the building on St. Nicholas side, but the red portion with the windows is what you would actually see from the courtyard from the inner court. And this is the section to show that at the first floor we have a 12-foot floor-to-floor height, and then going up the other floors we have a 9-foot floor-to-floor height, and then at the top for plumbing and mechanical offsets we have a 10-foot floor-to-floor height. It's the transverse section, and then this is the blow-up of the windows. So once again we have a gray aluminum window that we are proposing, a double hung window with a gray metal panel below. So it could kind of be a little bit more neutral next to the building next door, and then a gray louver below for the P-tack. So at the wall sections, what we've drawn here is we have the second floor and third floor, and then the 6th floor horizontal stone band that you can see cut through, and that's projecting out about 4 inches to kind of articulate the base, the shaft, and then the top of the building. And then it's finished off with a 3'4" actual cornice at the top. And then this one is cut through the brick that is along 152nd Street, where we're carrying across horizontally, but we also have a setback along the residential portion of the building that has planting similar to the areaways that you see in the district. And then these are our blow-up details that show that the cornice, so what we've done is the cornice is 3'4", so that the cornice works with the 8-inch intervals now of the brick, and then the lintels, the lintel detail to the left of the slide shows that we're just keeping simple lintels across the openings to kind of make it a little bit less prominent across the lintels, but then we're really emphasizing the horizontal across the top with the cornice. And then here we're matching, there's a steel curb that we're proposing to match along 152nd Street along the property. And then the railing details to show the vertical post and the space 5 inches on center that's 4 feet high, and then the horizontal. And the canopy is only, we're keeping it straight horizontal 8 inches high. So here we've brought in the floor plans also just to show you that the purple space to the right of the slide is showing the Dance Theater of Harlem space. They also have a space, just so you know, they also have a space on 152nd Street between Amsterdam and St. Nicholas that you'll see later on. So they really wanted, it's part of the deed, my understanding is in order to maintain the site that Dance Theater of Harlem had to have that corner location. Then we have the gym, which is the yellow space, and there's 2 apartments on this floor. Then at the typical floors, we have 7 apartments, and at the upper floors with the setbacks, we have 2 additional apartments for a total of 39 units. That's the roof plan. So this is the proposed rendering that has been photo montaged within the district. And if you look, you see that we are pretty close to aligning, but the existing building being slightly higher than our front along St. Nicholas. And then this is the view looking from 151st Street, further south. And this is looking towards the south from 153rd Street. So you see that kind of horizontal banding picking up at the top of the first and the second floor, as well as the coursing of the brick that continues horizontally and then kind of terminates that corner. And then this slide has additional details where you see on the 153rd Street building across St. Nicholas, where you have that vertical brick coursing, with the lower left slide showing the storefront at the corner. And then here in the lower slides, because, you know, DTH, Dance Theater of Harlem, is definitely, they've been a fixture in the community, and they're located half a block away as well, so they'll continue to use this space, but also have a more prominent location on St. Nicholas Avenue.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Could you just go back to the rendering for a second from the corner? Look from the view from the corner. Thanks. That's great. I just wanted to ask you about that corner window ensemble. You treat it differently than the rest of the windows, which either have a blank panel under them or a louver under them. Can you explain what your choice was there and why you made that choice?
Well, we wanted the corner to kind of stand out and be different than the others. Also, the P-tacks we placed away from the corner, so we wanted just kind of the more heavier material to wrap the corner as opposed to the metal panel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, we have a few speakers. Signe Harade.
Good morning. My name is Signe Harade, and I live at 849 St. Nicholas Avenue North and adjacent to the BRP DTH project being reviewed. I'm here as a shareholder of that building, as well as the vice president of our board of directors. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. As a community member and a homeowner, I am very concerned about the preservation of our neighborhood. We primarily support the application for this project, but we would ask the commission to consider some questions we have about the project and some context. We appreciate the degree to which the design team has selected details that we feel are contextual to our neighborhood, including but not limited to the color of the brick and some of the masonry details and the corner detail of the windows. Because the application materials didn't present the traditional sight line drawings, we were a little bit confused about some of the visibility and massing, but don't have tremendous concerns about that. We are very appreciative that BRP has taken into consideration our concerns and feedback in the design process prior to today's hearing. We feel that this feedback that they have incorporated should modifications be requested by the commission, actually be understood from our perspective for the commissioners today. We are very concerned that the building would be larger than ours for many reasons. The only reason pertinent we understand here is to the integrity of the St. Nicholas Avenue facades of the Sugar Hill Historic District. We understand that our building facade is landmarked, and we believe that it helps to maintain the character and the history specific to our area. Were this new project to actually be taller than our building, we believe that it could dwarf the architectural grandeur that is distinct to our block, which extends from our building up to West 153rd Street. BRP has adjusted their design so that their building is lower than ours, and we appreciate that. From what we can see, they have also set back their bulkhead and 7th floor from street view. We would like the support of LPC in keeping the building shorter than our building. We don't know of an alternative to the T-pack grills, but they are the only element of the design that doesn't seem to fit aesthetically. We are wondering if there are choices of grills that can hold up better over time. We understand there could be flashing options to help support the integrity of the grills over time. In the few instances where those grills have been installed in our area, it doesn't seem to take long before they are worn and distressed. Though not relevant directly to your purview as a matter of preservation, but of preservation and importance to us, we are very grateful to BRP that they have worked with collaborators to make this building 100% affordable housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Patrick Walder.
Good morning, Commissioners. Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. HDC applauds the height, bulk, and materiality of this proposed new construction. While this building is playing by all the correct urban design rules, as Mies van der Rohe famously said, God is in the details. To this end, the details in the facades need some harmonizing. The corner windows arrangement could work, but the glazing should be lowered to the floor instead of stopping short, which would result in a much better anchored corner. There are several precast belt courses on this building, but there does not seem to be any hierarchy between the different stories of the building. For instance, the second story course works much better than the fifth story, which appears as a termination of the building despite a cornice directly above it. This could be solved by adding this element directly below the cornice or reconfiguring the profiles of these courses to make them less prominent. HDC finds the PTAC units unacceptable and the street-facing louvers unattractive. The fenestration appears inconsistent and the large expanse of brick along the street facade is asymmetrical. According to the interior plans, there is no programmatic need for this wall of brick. Single punched openings could ameliorate this void of space, and these openings are found on neighboring buildings in the historic district. Overall, this is a contextual building which, after some tinkering, could be a rather handsome addition to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? All right, Community Board 9 recommends, they have no objections to the proposed structure and believes that it does not impact the fabric of the historic district, and it notes that the materials for the exterior, including design and context, are in line with LPC guidelines. All right, do we have any questions for the architectural team or the applicants? Oh, that's the brick. Okay, in that case, we can close the hearing. All right, comments? Okay, yes, Fred.
This is a classic contextual infill building, and I think it is generally a terrific response. It's not made easier to make these buildings appropriate when affordability is such a overriding concern. I know I used to do these kinds of buildings a lot in my earlier career. It is very difficult. But I think the architect has really risen to the occasion, has done masterful, has studied the context and has responded in a masterful way, meaning she's working with today's materials, today's building methodologies, today's understanding of how we cool a building. Sure, we'd all love not to see PTAC units, but you know that's what we have to live with when such affordability is brought to bear, and I think they've been integrated very well. Overall, I have nothing to suggest except one thing, and it certainly would not keep me from voting for it as is, and it comes actually a little bit diametrically opposed to the first testimony that we heard. I think the whole building, if the lower floor were about maybe 2 feet or something were added to that floor and the whole thing just pushed up a little bit more, it would seem more contextual and the proportions would be better. But, and I don't quite understand why the neighbor needs to distinguish itself from this new building by being 2 feet higher or something like that. It is distinguished from the neighbor already by being, you know, such a robust earlier version of a beautiful building, apartment building along the avenue. So, but that's I don't think it's a minor comment, and I understand that adding 2 feet all around to a building is not an inexpensive thing to do, and it may not be possible. But I'm just adding that as a thought for you all to think about. And but a very nice job. And I will say, if we approve this building today, it's very unusual, I think, to approve a new building in a historic district on first hearing. So maybe too preliminary, but congratulations.
Yes, John.
to start, I can approve just as is. I think Commissioner Bland made an interesting comment, because in the neighborhood, typically what you'll see, even in the presentation and throughout the district and the areas surrounding it, that the corner buildings, especially in a major intersection as this, tend to be slightly, ever so slightly taller than the buildings that are in the center of the block. I'm not arguing for that. I can approve it as is, but that was the only one thing that kind of struck me about the building.
Okay, other comments? Yes.
No, I agree with what you guys were saying about the fact that the first floor kind of looks a little stubby. I think a way to approach it that would be very contextual would be to look next door, where the second floor has a tad more articulation to it, or a tad more limestone to it. So instead of having a stubby single floor base, you had a slightly less stubby two-story base. It'd be very simple to, let's say, add the precast in between those rustications or something like that. It'd be very simple, and I think it would help the proportions that Fred and John were talking about without adding an inch to the building. I would, however, echo the testimony of the HDC. I think if you look at the building to the left, you see that the smaller windows always have an association as being bathroom or secondary windows. And even though the corner windows here are the same size, because you read the window with the P-tack as a single opening, the windows in the corner, for me, the most important window, looks peculiarly small, both in proportion, because it's kind of squarish, and in height. So I would just suggest, and again, it's not a costly thing at all, to use the blank panels on the corner instead of the masonry, just to kind of allow those windows not to look relatively shorter. But I can approve it with that being handled at staff level.
Other comments?
I agree with everything that's been said.
Okay, I don't agree with Michael about the windows, but on the corner, and I think that maybe you can't distinguish the panels from the glass from afar, but I think that the corner having more masonry and anchoring it is important. But I think some of these, you know, I would like to also disagree with what Fred said. I think when it comes to affordable housing projects, it's about sort of balancing some of the aspects of aesthetics with also the program need. But I think this is an example where I think the Commission can really see as a model where affordable housing works very well with historic districts. I think the massing works well. I think the program is able to be accommodated. And, you know, 25 years ago, affordable housing projects were very simple. And I think over the years, there was an understanding that affordable housing projects can also have aesthetic value. And we've seen that trend. And I think this is one of those buildings that speak to that, where there's more articulation, there's differences in material. Whether it's within a historic district or outside, I think that these buildings can be as robust as other buildings as well. I think that, you know, that the team has been working very hard, and obviously the design will continue to evolve. So since most of our comments are that the Commission could support this, I think I would just say that they continue to work with the staff on the details of it. Does that seem reasonable? Yes. Okay, very good.
One more thing.
Yes.
This is really, it's a little bit programmatic. It's not really within our purview, but it may ultimately impact the front of the building. I just remember in downtown Brooklyn, in the Cultural District with the Mark Morris Dance Center, and Fred can speak to that very well, that the ground floor space had dance studios right on the street. And when the building was, you know, originally built, they were completely open. But the dance company found that they were a little uncomfortable with the idea of whether they, you know, whether they were their dancers or classes, people dancing, of like having them completely exposed. And so that just might be something you want to think about.
Okay. All right. Fred?
So now, in the matter of 841 to 847 St. Nicholas Avenue in the Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill Northwest Historic District. This is a vacant lot. The application is to construct a new building. I note that the Hamilton Heights, Sugar Hill Northwest Historic District developed into a residential district in the late 19th century, with most of the existing buildings being late 19th century row houses and late 19th century and early 20th century classically inspired revival-style apartment buildings of 5 and 6 stories, built primarily of brick, many with stone bases and featuring stone, terracotta, and metal trim and ornamentation, and that the designs of the apartment buildings adjoining intersections within the historic district often express their corners with more prominent architectural features. I also note that 841 to 847 St. Nicholas Avenue is set at the northeastern corner of the intersection of St. Nicholas Avenue and West 152nd Street, and that the adjacent buildings include 5 and 6-story brick apartment buildings featuring light-colored masonry trim and ornamentation, a tripartite facade organization, punched masonry openings, and double-hung windows. I recommend approval that the construction of a new building on this vacant corner lot with its street facades closely aligning with the facades of the neighboring buildings will help return solidity to the corner of the block and uniformity to the street walls, significant characteristics of the historic district. That the proposed building will be in keeping with the apartment buildings at this block and throughout the historic district in terms of overall massing and height, and will be well scaled to the lot. That the ratio of masonry to glazing, floor level heights, and use of punched masonry openings and double hung windows will further reflect aspects of the neighboring historic district building, and serve to unify the streetscapes and historic district. That the red brick, light beige, cast stone, and gray painted metalwork and fiberglass cornice will relate well to the materials and finished palettes of the neighboring historic building, apartment buildings, thereby helping the building to harmonize with its context within the streetscape views without diminishing the sense of the individuality of the neighboring historic buildings. That the facades of the building will feature a tripartite organization typical of the classically inspired apartment buildings in this historic district, and with a distinct base, middle, and top. That the presence of a recess at the middle of the West 152nd Street facade will recall the character of modest courtyards sometimes found at historic apartment buildings of this size within the historic district. That the rustication of the masonry at the corner and base and use of band courses will be in keeping with the types of decorative masonry treatments commonly used at apartment buildings throughout the historic district, and will be consistent with such treatment in terms of placement, scale, and level of articulation. That the change in plane and brick treatment at the corner will be consistent with other corner apartment buildings that express the corner with a different use of form and of materials. That the large windows at the ground floor in the corner of the building will be in keeping with ground floor commercial establishments found at corner buildings along St. Nicholas Avenue, and will further express that corner. That the ground floor windows further from the building corner will be more residential in scale, helping to maintain a harmonious relationship with the residential bases of neighboring buildings. That the assemblies of double-hung windows, louvers, and metal panels will feature a uniform pattern and proportional relationships with, which will support the unity of the building design and help them harmonize with the fenestration pattern of neighboring buildings within the streetscape views. That the recess of the western end of the West 152nd Street facade will facilitate the inclusion of a small yard similar in placement and size to those found at the immediate neighboring buildings and at other buildings throughout the historic district and will have limited projection and simple detailing, which will be compatible with the massing of the buildings and building and help it remain a secondary presence within the streetscape views. That the fencing will be simply designed and in keeping with the fencing found at neighboring properties in terms of height, material, and finish. That the main entrance marquee and address signage will be well scaled to the building and help provide prominence to the entrance in keeping with the character of the surrounds typically found at primary entrances of buildings throughout the historic district. That the light fixtures will be simply designed and compatible with the building design in terms of their size and placement. That the penthouse and bulkheads will be limited in size and set back from the primary street facades, helping them remain in keeping with the character of typical rooftop accretions found at buildings of this size when seen from public thoroughfares. And that the building's courtyard and alley facades and rooftop penthouse and bulkheads will be simply designed and utilize materials and finishes which will support their identities as harmonious secondary elements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This application is approved.
Commissioners, the second item is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 196769. This is 1107 Fifth Avenue, located within the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. This is a neo-Renaissance style apartment building designed by Rouse and Goldstone and built in 1925. The application is to enlarge a rooftop bulkhead.
Two speakers.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hughes, Preservation Staff. This item is 1107 Fifth Avenue, located between 91st Street and 92nd Street in the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. The proposal is to enlarge a rooftop bulkhead. Peter Barcelona and Athmane Ayochichi with Rand Engineering are here to elaborate and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So as you can see, this is the roof plan. So at the left, you can see the existing bulkhead plan, and next to it, there's two egress bulkhead at the same time. Here, the yellow, this is where we have the extension. We were building a small powder room next to it. This is the floor plan inside the bulkhead, the elevator bulkhead. There is 4 elevators within. So this is a partial section of the roof. The existing is on the left-hand side, and the new proposed on the right-hand side. The proposed extension of the elevator is 10 feet. And this is the section showing the extension. On the left-hand side, we have the section through the elevators. On the right-hand side, you can see the 17 feet that we are trying to keep for the code and safety of the elevators from the roof level. And then there is an 8 feet above it for the clearance on top of the sheave. The sheave is an existing sheave that we're gonna be keeping to keep the same look of the elevator and the same type of the elevator. An elevator, it's an old elevator, it's a manual elevator, and we're trying to keep it. So all the equipment will be kept, it's just we're gonna be extending it 1 story high. On top of that 8 feet clearance, there is a tank that it's an existing, and we're just gonna be moving it 1 story high because of the required overhead dimensions of the 17 and the 8 feet clearance inside the mechanical room. This is a rendering of the extension on the left-hand side. You can see the existing, which is cladded by metal cladding. And then the extension that we're proposing, we're just gonna use the same material. Here the overall elevation of the extension. As you can see, the existing gray shaded area is already big within the elevation of the building. So the proposed extension is not going to be that significant overall within the elevation. But on the height, yes, it will extend the building about 10 foot. On the left-hand side, you can see the rendering that we had before we did the mock-up. These are all the existing elevation showing the existing bulkhead not visible from the street on 5th Avenue and the nearest streets. This is an old photo that it was taken maybe in the 40s or the 50s. Across the park, across the reservoir. As you can see on this zoomed photo, how the bulkhead already was something big and massive within the building. At the same time, you can see the surrounding bulkheads all over. They are significantly really tall, especially the one on the right-hand side, because they all have that, elevators, overhead, and maybe the same thing that we have in our building, which is a tank for water. This is the mock-up that we installed to represent the extension. It's an orange netting on the scaffolding, so the mock-up may be bigger than the actual bulkhead extension. But just to give you the vision how it would look like. I believe that the extension, looking at the surrounding building, it's not something really significant, and within the shape of the building, it does not feel really that big of an extension. This is some other photos from the park. This is a photo from 5th Avenue. It's not. It's only visible from 93rd Street and 5th Avenue. And then this is a photo taken from 93rd Street between Madison and Park Avenue. So you can see the mock-up, but already the bulkhead was really visible. You can see it from down from Lexington Avenue too. This is a view of the mock-up from 5th Avenue, 89th Street, 88, and 86. So below 86 you cannot see. This is the actual mock-up, so you can see how the mock-up is bigger than the actual bulkhead. So, and then you see the cladding. On the left-hand side, those two brick rooms is the extension of the staircase that we have. So this door right now, it's a door that leads to the mechanical room, will be basically become the entrance to the roof. The existing elevators, they don't extend to the roof, so the extension would help handicap to use the roof. In addition, those two exit staircase, they're too narrow, they're not convenient for personnel to take furniture to the roof, or if a resident of the building wanted to use it. So the extension would help get the handicap accessibility being met by the building. At the same time, will help the residents for convenience. The existing cladding is metal cladding. I'm not sure if that one was put in, but from the photo that we've seen, the old photo that was taken, this one, it does not really show if the cladding was installed or not, but we believe that there was a cement cladding behind the sheet metal, and I think at some point the building may have some water issues, so they decided to cover that with metal sheets for better waterproofing.
Does the water tank have to sit on top of does it have to be, I know it's there right now, but does it have to be above the extension, the overrun?
Yes, it has to be there.
Can you explain why?
Well, because the existing system is connected to that. So if we have to put it somewhere else, we need to reroute all the pipe and it has to go through the building. Second is the structure that we have anywhere else would not be able to support that extension. And then the roof is not that big. So if we put it anywhere, you will take that convenience of using the roof as well.
Does it have to be enclosed?
Not really.
If I could just interject, I'm Michael Wolf. I'm the manager for the building. I'm an associate of the building for about 31 years now.
Okay.
This particular roof, we have a penthouse that goes along the entire top of the roof. So our space is limited. And the terrace that the board elected to place obviously is to enjoy the beautiful Central Park and the other views and a place for shareholders to gather, as they're not a new building, as you can see, and there's really not a lot of amenities within the building. That being said, our roof space is extremely limited, so the entire purpose for extending this bulkhead is really about accessibility. If I could, just one thing, it's all about that. The only way to get up there, and the one bulkhead is, can we go back to a slide? The one bulkhead that was shown next to our existing bulkhead. Oh, let's get there. Okay, that small one, the light brown one, that's really an internal stair that's only accessible for a few apartments. The other staircase, which is a fire stair, which is on the other side of this terrace, is extremely difficult to get up. Handicap aside, anyone that doesn't walk very well or maybe elderly, make it virtually impossible to get up to this new terrace. So the entire part, we'd rather not spend the money. It's a lot of money to raise the elevator machinery and the water tank. We wish we had another option. All of the elevators in the building are manual. So not only is it a security breach if we don't use an elevator, but it's also about accessibility. So this is our only means a method to raise that elevator machine room to allow people to have accessibility through the elevator. That's really what this is all about.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions? Okay, we may have other questions, but we'll take testimony. Elizabeth Fagan.
Hi, Elizabeth Fagan, Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. The proposed bulkhead enlargement is entirely out of scale and inappropriate for this elegant building. 1107 Fifth is located on a very significant corner, surrounded by notable sites such as the Jewish Museum, Cooper Hewitt, Church of the Heavenly Rest, and the Kahn and Burden mansions. These surrounding buildings are also low in scale, making this building very visible to the south along Fifth Avenue, in addition to its visibility from many places in Central Park. One of the places where this bulkhead is at its most visible is at the Engineers Gate entrance to the park on 90th Street, where numerous passersby will notice this rooftop. The current bulkhead is already an eyesore, and we cannot understand why the applicant would choose to make an existing problem even worse. In its original design, the building had a distinctive water tower enclosure with pedimented openings and a decorative copper tile roof. It is unfortunate that was once a significant element of this building has now been marred. As the numerous pages in the plan show, this bulkhead is visible from nearly everywhere in its current state, and to add an additional 10 feet of height for the sole purpose of elevator access to the roof would be ungainly and arrogant. Our Preservation Committee asked the Commission to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Patrick Waldo.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. Our committee objects to the height of the proposed rooftop bulkhead on such an important Fifth Avenue building. 1107 Fifth Avenue was constructed with special attention to the upper 3 floors, which were designed specifically for post-serial heir Marjorie Merriweather post-Hutton. The proposed bulkhead would be highly visible from street level, and plopped down on top of these important upper floors would be a major disruption to the building's historic character. If the water tank is an issue here, our committee wonders if it could be moved to an adjacent location on the roof, or better yet, the applicant could simply leave the water tower exposed. Water towers are an iconic piece of New York City infrastructure and should be celebrated as vital rooftop furniture. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lil Vandervalk.
My name is Lo Vanderbalk. I'm representing Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We unfortunately oppose this application as well. We note that this is a very important building, the Meriwether Post E.F. Hutton Association, and also it's probably one of the only buildings that has a porte cochere, which was to ease the transition of moving from the mansion which they owned, the Meriwether Post, to the top 3 floors of this building, which was designed specifically for that purpose. And it's one of the most attractive buildings on Fifth Avenue. It has on the 12th floor the Palladian windows. Also, I've handed out photos from various vantage points, especially on Fifth Avenue, where there are so many important buildings. And as friends mentioned earlier, Elizabeth Fagan mentioned, it's very visible from Engineers Gate, which is really the heart of Fifth Avenue in that area, very much frequented. And it's also visible from the Bridle Path, and then it's uniquely visible, I mean, as a lone building from the track where people gather at 90th Street. It's also visible, as has been indicated, from many other vantage points north of the Jewish Museum as you look up Fifth, on Madison and 92nd, on Park and 92nd, and even going down to Lex. So it's an important building and it's highly visible. So we hope you will take that into account. As to alternatives, we're not experts at alternatives, but we would hope that some kind of an alternative could be found. Remember that there are 4 elevator silos. Only one of these silos is going up is being extended. So the other 3 silos for this extension are basically empty. That might indicate that if you could do a water tank that is not circular, that has another kind of shape, that might be one solution. A separate water tank elsewhere could be another solution, as the Historic Districts Council representative mentioned. So we hope that the commission will encourage an alternate solution to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers on the side? Right. The Community Board also recommends disapproval of this application because of its height and visibility. So can you speak to some alternatives? And yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Peter Barcelona. I'm the applicant of record. Yes, one of the alternatives to extending it the 4th level or raising the water tank would be to expose the water tank, which historically hasn't occurred here. This building has always had an enclosed water tank. Unfortunately, just by virtue of the height that we need and the size of the water tank required to not only for the fire protection system, that's the fire standpipe system and the domestic system, and under current code, this tank would have had to have been over 15,000 gallons. Under old code, we're allowed 6,000 as long as we keep it and maintain its location. So if I have to move it, now I have a massive tower to provide 30 minutes of fire protection. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want a massive tank, a much higher volume tank. Certainly, locating the tank in its current position makes the most sense. Well, if the commission duly notes it, my client would be amenable to not building the enclosure walls at the top floor so that the bulkhead would pretty much be at the current height that it is. We would likely want to at least have a guardrail or some type of protection for service purposes. But that's the only other alternative that we see with regard to the overall bulkhead height. I had previously filed to remove the tank and put in a fire pump system in the basement, bringing in 2 new fire services to feed that. However, the Department of Buildings denied the application. I took it all the way to the Commissioner's office. They denied that application request, basically citing that we would have to conform to 2014 code in order to do that, which is not feasible for a building of this nature. We would have to provide emergency generating equipment, which would have to be at the roof, which defeats the whole point of what we're trying to achieve for the building.
Are there other questions for the applicant? Any other questions? Okay, thank you. In that case, we can close the hearing. All right, comments? Yes.
I think structurally it probably makes sense to leave it at the location where it is, but I agree with you and I agree with others that the tank does not have to be enclosed and it doesn't have to have a hip roof on it either, and so I would suggest that those 2 alternatives be sought.
Is there any suggestion on the treatment of the water tank, color, or anything that would, I'm not the expert on this part, but I'm sorry?
The weather to gray.
Well, I have a question about if we're going to ask that it not be enclosed, I mean, there are lots of areas of the city where unenclosed water tanks on roofs actually make a whole cityscape. I'm just not sure they do here. I'm wondering if they do. So what we're asking for would be less bulky, I understand, but it could be seen as then out of context for such a building now, really an incredible building. I've been inside this building, to now have an unexposed. It may well be, I just don't know.
all right, other comments? Yes, yes.
Wouldn't necessarily have to be made out of wood. They could have one that's made out of metal and painted out.
Commissioners, generally in this area, water tanks are enclosed and either some sort of a decorative surround along Fifth Avenue. Yeah.
Well, okay, so it's a bit of a conundrum. Well, I guess here are the issues. One is that it's for access to, this is not to one apartment, but to people in the building, correct? It's for the entire building. Right, and there does seem to be some, for structural reasons and also just, practical reasons why to relocate this water tank is going to be just problematic. And it's hard to kind of deny people access to the roof as well. So it's really about trying to mitigate the structure. Yes.
Right. Going in another direction,
yes.
What if it was much more ornate? What if it was actually designed and in keeping with some Beaux-Arts or other vocabulary?
Interesting.
I was going to say something similar. I think that the applicant could pretty easily do a quick analysis of water tanks and elevator overruns in the district and come up with something that would be appropriate to the building. He indicated that there was some evidence of there being a more architectural version of this particular bulkhead having been in existence prior to the metal cladding being put on. So maybe a little scratching around would help and come up with something that would be appropriate.
This may be a case when a rooftop addition should call attention to itself.
Okay, so does the commission feel that that's a better way to go to really, if it's going to be viewed, than to actually create it as, treat it as an sort of rooftop?
Applicant to explore that.
Yeah. Okay, we can ask them to do that. So should we ask them to come back, or should we just ask them to work with staff on this?
I think if it's going to be visible, they're pretty much going to have to come back.
Okay, so why don't we do that? Okay, so we will ask them to come back and show us the design for the bulkhead. Okay, we won't take any action today.
Okay, Commissioners, the next item, item 3, is an application for certificate of appropriateness at Borough of Manhattan, docket number 1910920. This is 753 Madison Avenue, located within the Upper East Side Historic District. It's an apartment building designed by Anthony M. Pavia and built in 1959, and the application is to modify storefront infill and replace cladding.
Good morning, Commissioners. James Rusciello, Preservation Staff. The item before you today is 753-759 Madison Avenue, aka 2731 East 65th Street, at that intersection's northeast corner in the Upper East Side Historic District. The proposal is to alter the corner storefronts that fronts both Madison Avenue and East 65th Street. The reason this proposal is being presented today is that although the storefront is in a building that the Upper East Side Historic District Designation Report describes as having no style, the proposal to raise and enlarge the windows, reclad the surrounds for the Madison Avenue is not covered by the Madison Avenue storefront master plan. John Deely, the architect, is here to answer your questions, as is the owner's representative, Ralph Sutton. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Commissioners, for listening to us today. We're going to start out by taking a view of the corner of the existing building currently. Like James said, it's on the northeast corner of East 65th and Madison Avenue. Some historic context of the building. You see a Sanborn map which indicates the lot. The time of designation of the building itself was in the 1950s, I believe. And
no construction.
1950.
District, and it was built in the 50s, but
yeah.
I think it's just part of the overall district. The building itself doesn't have specific history.
Doesn't, yeah, the district itself, yeah, I think it was the 80s, actually. And then, again, a view of the existing conditions from 2009, where we see the actual alignment of the storefronts at the height that it currently is. It's about 9 foot above the existing sidewalk from the furthest point north. And here we see the existing and proposed. So the proposal is to raise the existing storefront to match a proposal that was approved about 2 years ago. Some of you actually may recognize this look. So we're going to be proposing to enlarge the glass to match the adjacent property and to reclad the building into a limestone material that matches the context of the neighborhood. This is the view of the East 65th Street side, adjacent to the co-op building that's above. Again, raising the storefront height to match the previously approved building, and limestone cladding to replace the black granite cladding to match more of the context of the neighborhood. This is a view of the corner here, rendering of the proposed, calling out the materiality of the building. So like I said previously, we're proposing the limestone, natural Indiana limestone, to match the samples that we brought with us today. A black storefront system that has a minimal visible lines and a thin profile, and a slender black granite sill to carry the transition of the height between the different elevations of the points of the building. Here we're showing, again, proposed elevations comparative to the existing look of the building. You'll notice that there's a enlargement of the glass and installation of a new entry that's going to be pulled out to meet the street front. Some more elevations. This is the East 65th Street side. We're calling to install some new glass panes here as well, but keeping with the existing structural members that are there.
So just a quick question. So the piers that you have in your new storefront, are those existing, or those are, because they don't align with the fenestration above? So
Talking about here?
Right, so you have these piers, right, do they align with?
Yes.
They do,
Yeah,
okay.
those would be carrying the same structural load down. There are columns behind there.
Okay, I don't know why it looks a little odd, but they're intended to do that, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. And a plan of what we presented, we're going to be basically doing a white box in the space to prepare for a potential future tenant.
Okay. Are there, yes, John?
Is there any plan to deal with what will now be the oddball storefront in between the two that will have been raised?
That will come at a future date. Right now, there's a current tenant in the space, so when that lease is up, potentially we'll deal with it when we come to that. Yeah, it'll be a future date.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Just 2 seconds, talk about the coping, because some of your renderings show it, the existing has it.
Sure.
Are you killing it? Because your renderings don't show it.
No, we would be basically keeping the existing coping and patching it or repairing it as necessary upon removal of the stone.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay. We have one speaker, Elizabeth Fagan.
Hi, Elizabeth Fagan, Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Over time, this building has slowly lost its mid-century charm, losing its unique blue glazed brick facade a few years ago and altering its storefronts with uninspired designs. A few years ago, this building came before the commission to raise the height of windows at another storefront at the end of the building. After the commission approved the proposal, the permit was later amended to remove the existing black cladding and replace it with limestone. Today, this storefront still retains a bit of mid-century character with its black granite cladding. Black granite is commonly seen in the district at the entrances and storefronts of mid-century buildings, and our Preservation Committee believes that this is a distinctive feature of buildings of this style. While other limestone storefronts in the district can be successful, to us this design lacks substance and depth. We do agree, though, that the taller window height is more attractive. To us, the piecemeal replacement of storefronts as vacancies arise is problematic and results in a disjointed appearance. Because this entire building has been so altered over time, if a limestone storefront is to be proposed, we feel that it must have a more interesting design and that the limestone should exactly match the storefront at number 755 at the end of the building, or else the disparities in the material will be even more obvious. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? All right. Community Board 8 recommends disapproval because the limestone of the new storefront will be different from the limestone of the northern storefront, and the rusticated design of the new storefront will be different from the planar design of the northern storefront. And the vertical proportions of the new storefront will be the same as the northern storefront, but the limestone will be different. Yes, you'd like to respond? Yes.
Yes, please. We removed,
yes.
Hi, Ralph Sutton, the owner's rep. We actually removed those disparities because that comment came back through an earlier draft. I think that Friends of the Upper East Side may have seen the previous design, which had the rusticated design and element to the limestone. So if you actually look at the current design, it is intended to match.
Can you just show us that, please?
Sure. So you can see they actually match. There is no rustication on the corner.
So it was in response to the community board's comments?
I believe the community board's comments were relayed to a staff member at LPC who relayed them to us, so correct. And then if you go back to the last slide, just to address the other question about residential co-op buildings, the building that's shown here is directly opposite on East 65th Street. Generally the same vintage residential building. You can see the design of Givenchy and the retail there. It's a limestone with actually much even more ornate detail. You know, that was approved a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yes, Kim.
Is it meant to be the same color? Because the color is different.
It is meant to be the same color. We might, maybe the renderer didn't show that correctly, but it will match, the sample will match the existing.
Okay, any other questions? Right, we can close the hearing. Right, any concerns or comments? Okay.
I think it's generally appropriate. I do think it's interesting, some of the comments about how the building's changed over time, and it is kind of unfortunate that you know, the urge to homogenize seems in this particular case to have eroded this building's distinctiveness, which people, you know, look, there was a time when people just didn't, and a time may still be with us, that people just didn't really love the white brick buildings, and you know, when they failed, they decided to replace it with the more low-key red, and now, of course, the tail is coming along with the dog, and it's turning into a limestone base. But I think that given what's already happened, I think it's appropriate. I just think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes.
I think I have the same comment that Michael had, because I go by the building a lot on the bus, and I actually like the black base at the bottom, but it's going out of style, and they already had taken off most of it, but I agree that times change, but I did like what it originally was. It was the black base.
Okay. All right, should we move to decision, or yes?
I have to concur. I mean, I am there a lot, and it does seem fitting in black. Happy to vote in favor of this, but I actually think the other retail is a little out of whack with the building.
Then let me speak. I wasn't going to, but I'm sorry if I'm obtuse, but I don't see this as a charming mid-century modern building at all. I see it now as a building which, for the Upper East Side, this is not typical of why the district was made. I think the fact that part of the building is black and part of it is white is a problem. I have no problem thinking about these kinds of buildings. Some maybe had a black base, but they all certainly didn't by any means. Many of them had limestone bases. I think rectifying and homogenizing this so that it's unified color and style improves the building, and I can certainly vote for it.
Okay, so why don't we move to a decision?
In the matter of docket 19-10 920 753 Madison Avenue, the Upper East Side Historic District, an apartment building designed by Anthony M. Pavia and built in 1959. The application is to modify storefront, infill, and replace cladding. I note that the building is not one of the buildings for which the Upper East Side Historic District was designated. I recommend approval, finding that the removal of the existing black granite cladding and glass storefront infill will not eliminate fabric that relates to the streetscape, that the proposed work to create larger display windows is in keeping with the evolving commercial character of Madison Avenue, that the proposed storefront openings will maintain a rhythm which harmonizes with the adjacent storefronts on Madison Avenue, that the limestone material relates well to the main entrance on East 65th Street and the previously approved cladding at storefronts on Madison Avenue.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? This application is approved.
Commissioners, item 4 on the agenda is an application for certificate of appropriateness, the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 196193. This is 41 Worth Street, which is an individual landmark, the 41 Worth Street building. This is a Venetian-inspired Italianate-style store and loft building designed by Isaac F. Duckworth and built circa 1865. The application is to replace storefront infill.
Good morning, Commissioners. Meredith Leet, Preservation Staff. The application is to replace storefront infill with operable storefront infill at 41 Worth Street, which is an individual landmark located on the north side of Worth Street between West Broadway and Church Street. The architect and the artist are here to explain the details of the proposal.
Hi. My name's Nate Lohman, and I'm the owner of the space. And just Andrew, my architect, is going to explain what we are proposing to do. But just by way of introduction, I wanted to explain that I'm an artist. I work in painting, oil and acrylics, and also sculpture. And I've been working the last 10 years right here at 54 Franklin Street, around the corner. The sole intention of what we're trying to do, changing these facade windows, is to change the space from commercial to live work. Rachel and I are hoping to move in, and I will keep the space as my studio. Just further to that point, the spaces found in this neighborhood in Tribeca are the kinds of spaces that I've always dreamed of working in. There's nothing that I want to do to change anything about this space except make these windows operable so that we can legally live and work in the same place. It's a light and air issue.
Hello, I'm Andrew Rainiak, the architect for this project, and as Nate said, we're here primarily because we have two trigger issues in our proposed storefront replacement having to do with the legalization. So again, this building, which is located on the north side of Worth Street, was designated as an individual landmark, not so much for the architect Duckworth, who hasn't really passed into history, but definitely from Nathaniel Badger, who, along with Bogardus, was really a central person in the development of the cast iron facade. This building is currently has a commercially zoned ground floor. It was last occupied by, I think, New York Law School had some classrooms there. Before that, it was a call center. But in any case, it's been a commercial space since the building was built in about 1865. We tried to find historic images of this building, and the tax photos are all we could find. There were no original drawings, no etchings, no other images that we could identify. The most salient characteristic of this building is that sometime after it was first built, the ground floor cast iron was removed and discarded. There's nothing left. It wasn't covered. It was really removed down to the structural columns, and it was replaced with a kind of limestone cladding, which has a sort of deco character of its own. I mean, the landmarks designation just sort of glossed over the ground floor, but we can see that by the 1980s, it's already been infilled with just aluminum storefront. But the 1940 tax photo, I think, is our best indication of how it is that we might want to proceed with this. If we look in at this photo, we see that this facade was it's a limestone flush facade, and it has really a three-part organization with a divided light transom window above, then a solid transom bar, and then display windows below. The entrance to the building is the farthest right of the four openings, which is just done with straight returns into a doorway. And the other two things are large display windows. I can't really tell why the second window from the left is recessed, because there's an existing masonry bulkhead which runs below it that was never lowered. There was no doorway there. It's hard to say exactly what it was. It could have been some kind of a manufacturing use. There was a concrete pad that we found behind it. Perhaps there was a machine. In any case, that is how we see the sort of most accurate historical condition of this storefront. As it exists today, the building, you can see it has a contrasting masonry bulkhead below. There are 2 existing vents which are to remain and 2 of the beautiful DEP monitoring boxes. There's a fire hydrant above, and one thing that we're planning to remove is the oil tank overflow valve, which you can see just next to the doorway. Looking from the angle, you can see that the windows are pushed right up to the front, which I think was the historical condition, and the entryway is done with straight returns. To put it in context, as Nate said, the current plan of the loft it's just an empty loft. There's some ramps, there's some weird floor height issues in the front. This ground floor space and cellar are, strangely enough, completely disconnected from the rest of the building. There's no access that goes through this space. The elevator is in the adjacent building. It's 2 buildings that have been combined as one co-op. So Nate and Rachel will be occupying this directly in and out. In our proposal, you see below, we propose opening a large aperture to the cellar below where Nate will be able to store work. We're actually going to put in a gantry so Nate can bring things directly off the street and lower them for storage into the basement. And in the rear, we have here 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. There's a mezzanine above with the kitchen. So as Nate mentioned, light and air is really an issue for us. So in converting from commercial, this building has plenty of light with south-facing windows on Worth Street, but for us, the real challenge is to provide operable windows large enough to provide the code-required light and air. So this is a summary of our proposal showing the existing condition on the left. We plan removing just the aluminum infill and the aluminum frame door. We're not touching anything else in the facade except the removal of the overflow valve. In our proposed elevation, we'd like to work with steel windows. And we propose a tripartite system with a divided light fixed transom panel above. And then there's a solid steel painted transom bar, and then large display windows below. Our solution for the doorway, which at 411 is big for a single door but too small for 2, is to do a single door. This is very useful for Nate and Rachel because they can load in large pieces through the doorway. The door is set back from the front, and it has a kick panel whose alignment is consistent with the display windows to the side. The current condition and our proposal. So what we can see here on the proposal is that we would like to install tilt windows. And this is really why we're going with steel, because to handle a window of this size and make it operable, steel is the best option. It gives us the largest operable unit with the smallest sight lines possible. These would be inward tilt windows that move back a total of 4 inches. All the hardware is on the inside. There's no visible hardware on the outside. And quite frankly, I don't see these windows being open very frequently to provide fresh air on a street that has buses on it and so on. We have a very robust air handling system that works from the courtyard in the rear. It's all going to be manufactured by Optimum Windows using their historic profiles that they've been doing since forever up in the Bronx. And it's all painted single color. It's a Benjamin Moore color. We have a swatch called wrought iron, which is a dark gray, which we also feel is consistent with what we see in the 1940s image. The sections here show the existing storefront section on the left. Again, at the doorway, we have the windows pushed all the way to the front of the street and the doors set back to the depth of the piers. We're replicating the same thing. The vertical dimensions change a little bit in that our doorway is as high as we can do, and but otherwise we're keeping it as similar as possible. It actually kind of looks like the color. Usually the images don't work, but wrought iron is simply it's a dark gray color that shifts a little bit depending on the conditions. Sometimes it looks a little lighter, sometimes darker. For reference, and I know that Meredith and Emma have done this at a staff level, we're also proposing replacing windows in the rear. I just show the images that we're also working on the rear facade. This is actually the cellar level and the ground floor as part of it. So that's really the bulk of our proposal.
Thank you. Yes. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Did you say, and am I right to read, that the 1940s photo showed multi-lights on the top? Were there? Could you figure that out? I can't. Oh, yeah.
As far as I can tell, it looks like a 3/3 divided light on top and then a solid transom panel, which is what we've tried to recreate in our current. I mean, it's.
But you're not doing 3/3, right?
We are proposing doing a similar 3/3.
Oh. But why does it look so different?
You know, this image here is taken on a very extreme angle. It's just like, it's just optically, it's just on such a raked angle.
I see. Okay, good.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we have one speaker, Patrick Wilder.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. The new storefront proposed in this application is not sensitively researched or executed. An individual landmark such as this deserves a better quality of work and a more thorough investigation into its original historic appearance. It appears the applicant is attempting to return the building's storefront design to how it appeared in the 1940s tax photo. Our committee does not believe this 1940s photo shows the original storefront. The building's original storefront should be found and copied. We look forward to seeing a more carefully researched proposal, one that presents the other facade iterations of this 150-year-old individual landmark. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers on this item? Right, the community board approves this application, and says the proposed interventions are much better than the existing condition. All right, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we can close the hearing. All right, I think the change in the storefront is good. Yeah, and I think I think they've done some research, and I don't know what it was originally, but there's historic evidence, and I think it's a much greater improvement than what we have right now. It's an opportunity to get something good happening there, at the same time allow the space to be used for their living space. And steel, yeah. Which is also a nice material. Yes, John?
I think it's a very strong effort, and I can't even imagine in my wildest dreams asking them to try to figure out how to replace the cast iron details that are gone for at least the last 80 years. So this is fine.
Okay, great. John, do you want to read that?
In the matter of docket number 19-6193, 41 Worth Street, 41 Worth Street, building an individual landmark, a Venetian-inspired Italianate-style store and loft building designed by Isaac F. Duckworth and built circa 1865. The application is to replace storefront infill. I recommend approval, noting that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant historic fabric, that the proportions and finish of the storefront infill will be consistent with storefronts found in buildings of this type, style, and age, and will recall this historic storefront shown in a 1940 tax photo in terms of configuration and finish, that the simple profiles and metal material of the proposed storefront infill will be harmonious with the industrial character of the building, that the operation of the built windows will not be perceptible when the windows are closed, helping the installation to remain a discrete presence within the streetscape, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the 41 Worth Street building individual landmark.
All in favor? Any opposed? This application is approved.
Commissioners, the next item on the agenda is item 5. It's an application for a certificate of appropriateness, the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 19-10686. This is 55 Horatio Street, located within the Greenwich Village Historic District. It's a Greek Revival-style row house built in 1848, and the application is to construct an areaway.
Good morning, Commissioners. Karina Bishop, Preservation Staff. The application before you is 55 Horatio Street, a Greek Revival-style row house built in 1848 and located between Hudson and Greenwich Streets in the Greenwich Village Historic District. The proposal is to excavate a portion of the sidewalk and construct an areaway featuring bluestone stairs, paving, and a Greek Revival-style fence and gate. The areaway will project 4 feet 6 inches into the sidewalk, a distance which was stipulated by the Department of Transportation in order for this proposal to obtain revocable consent. Please note that the historic masonry stoop was removed from the building and the areaway was modified in the early 20th century. The architect, Christopher Sinon, is here to present.
So my name is Christopher Steenon. I'm the architect from Urban Matrix, and just go to the next slide. So this is located in the Greenwich Village Historic District, way at the northern edge, right next to the Gansevoort Historic District. We're between Greenwich Street and Hudson Street along Horatio. As Karina pointed out, these are the original tax photos from the 1940s. It shows this house without any stoop or railing. Having dug into the records, it appears that these were removed in the 1930s, early 1930s, late 1920s, when the house was converted to an SRO. You can see the area is a bit derelict already. The house on the corner is boarded up, so it was a bit of a rough neighborhood at the time. Both houses, both 55 and 57, were done at about the same time, it appears, but the entrance that's remaining is really absolutely the most inexpensive solution one could find. It really does clip off the whole house. Clearly, if you look at the different house types in the neighborhood, other Greek Revival houses of this scale have stairs leading up to the parlor floor and a railing out in front. What we're proposing is to look at just replacing the railing. The house is currently a single-family house, and it's been utilized in this configuration for a very long time, so the owner wants to retain the front entrance in its current location. You can see on the left, with the mortar work, that the bricks have been replaced. There's clearly evidence throughout here that there was once a stoop and railing on this house and the one next to it. So actually building something back out into the right-of-way is still in keeping with what would have been there. So by maintaining the entrance at the ground level where it is now and just building out, we're proposing to add a railing just a few feet out from the front of the facade. It'll act like an apron to the front of the house, a bit of a transition between the public and semi-public space you really need for a house like this. Without it, it's really missing it, and quite frankly, the addition does help contribute positively to the rest of the streetscape itself. These are views looking east and west along Horatio Street in both directions. And this shows you more of the character. So right adjacent to the house on the left, you see there's all variety of brickwork. Some of them stick out a bit further with the railings and things on the house. More typical of what this house would have looked like is just a little bit further down Horatio Street just on the opposite side of Greenwich. This is 65, 7, and 69 Horatio. These houses are similar in the style, the type that this house would have been. You can see how the stairs would come down and there would have been a railing out in front. All of these houses, and quite frankly, it's very common right around this street, there's sort of a Greek revival style of railing. And I just showed different types. These are literally within, a door's width of the house. 64 is across the street. You can see it's got this sort of geometric versions you'd expect to see with a Greek revival style. And so we've actually picked this one on the far right as something that we'd like to replicate out in front of this house. We also looked at the tree grate. Originally we thought about copying the style. Now we're looking at something that's more just with the typical Department of Parks tree grid. But for the railing itself, showing it on the left, we have I've quite frankly copied and measured the type of railing that's there and its width and its styles and proportions, so that's effectively the kind of railings that are within the neighborhood. And then within it, within the sort of the semi-public area, we have railings, of course, leading down the stairs. So the top shows the existing addition. You have the stairs sort of popping up. You've got the existing cellar hatch, all with sort of a concrete area. And all we're proposing to do is to extend, outward about 4.5 feet to create an apron. Revise the steps so they come out a little bit more broadly than they do, because they do descend rather steeply quite right now. And this is what it would look like. Here's sort of the existing photo montage of the streets showing a railing addition on the front of 55 Horatio. And then I did these little model mock-ups showing the existing and then the proposed. We're also proposing to tint the concrete in front to the standard landmarks grayish color, which will match the blue stone we're proposing within the fence line. And then the view along the street, this is effectively what it looks like now, with the stairs just coming up abruptly, ending there at the street, and then with the bit of railing out in front, sort of to help in that transition.
Yes, Michael, you have a question.
Maybe I missed it, but why did you choose to set it where you set it, as opposed to further out, closer in?
We looked at, I was trying to give myself a little bit of a buffer originally. I thought maybe we could come out 5.5 feet. The Department of Transportation is concerned about the distance between the tree pit and the railing, even though the adjacent railings stick out much, much further. Actually, if you look back on at the beginning, the houses on 65 Horatio on the other side of the block, those railings themselves are only extending out about 4.5 feet. So we're effectively putting it in approximately the location where it is now. We didn't think we needed much more room than that to accomplish what we needed to repair the entrance.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we have one speaker, Patrick Walder.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. While HDC appreciates the applicant's effort to restore this building's historic ironwork, good urban design would involve bringing the ironwork into alignment with the neighboring ironwork in order to achieve a consistent treatment of streetscape features. We recognize that for this to occur, the owner has to pursue a revocable consent from the Department of Transportation. We hope the applicant takes this measure to bring the areaway into the lot line of the neighboring properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? All right. Community Board 2 recommends that the application be denied unless the footprint of the areaway and stairs conforms to the original plan and there be a substantial curb for the railing. Right. So that's Community Board 2's recommendation. Do we have any other questions for the owner? Okay, we could close the hearing. Comments? Are there any concerns with this? I think they've shown that there's a variety of both depth in terms of the areaway, and they've shown, they're using the material, the fence, that seems in keeping with the district as well.
I'll just also comment that maybe the neighbor, a twin at one time, will take this as a model and maybe think about doing the same for his house.
Other comments? All right, Adi?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 1910686, 55 Horatio Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District, a Greek Revival style row house built in 1848, and the application is to construct an areaway. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District, and further note that the historic masonry stoop was removed and the areaway was modified in the early 20th century. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or destroy any significant architectural features, that the proposed areaway configuration is in keeping with areaways found elsewhere in the Greenwich Village Historic District, and is modest in scale and will not overwhelm the streetscape, that the materials of the proposed areaway, including bluestone paving and iron railings, are in keeping with the material palette of the building and the streetscape, that the design of the proposed ironwork is consistent with the Greek Revival style of the row house, that the height and scale of the ironwork is in keeping with the scale of the facade and relates to the heights of other ironwork found within the streetscape, and that the work will not detract from the building or the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Greenwich Village Historic District.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This application is approved.
Commissioners, item 6 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness to the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 19-10952. This is 32 Parish Street, located within the Greenwich Village Historic District. It's a Greek Revival style row house built in 1845, and the application is to construct a rooftop addition and alter a rear addition.
Preservation Department staff. This application is for 32 Parish Street. It is located on the south side of the street between West 4th Street and Waverly Place in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is the location of the building. The proposal includes constructing a one-story rooftop addition and enlarging an existing rear addition. Neither of these will be visible from a public thoroughfare. The reason that these do not meet staff level rules is the presence of having both a rooftop and a rear addition at the same time, as well as the fact that there are not enough other rear additions in the block to meet the staff level requirements. And the applicant is here to discuss the proposal.
My name is Walter Radke. I'm the architect for 32 Perry. I'll be presenting on behalf of the owners. So we're at the southeast corner of Perry Street and 7th Avenue. This is our existing conditions, the front facade and the existing rear facade. And again, there it is. Okay, so we're right here, 32 Perry. So we're proposing the application for a new one-story penthouse. We have a penthouse at our neighbor 30 Perry Street, and there's also a double-height full floor at 34 Perry Street. And then we're filling in the L on the rear addition. So this is the massing plan here. So we're stepping back, obviously, from the front facade so that we're not visible from any public thoroughfare, and then filling in the L on an existing two-story rear addition. You can see on the other townhouses we have here, two-story additions at both our neighbor 30 Perry Street and at 34 Perry Street, as well as down the block. We have tall buildings at both ends here, which helps us mask, and it's also a narrow street, any view from public thoroughfare. This is the existing section, showing our existing chimneys up front. This is our proposed section, so we are proposing to move the chimneys to the rear so we don't see those from the street. Stepping back from the rear so we maintain our rear cornice, maintain our rear fenestrations on the top floor to maintain the donut, and filling the L with the rear addition. This is the existing front facade. So you can see we have a penthouse back here at 30 Parish Street. Also this double height rear full floor at 34 Parish Street. And this is our proposed penthouse as well. So this is the existing rear. Cut off a little bit here at the bottom. This is our existing rear addition. And then our proposed rear addition. We're hiding our rooftop air conditioners underneath our balcony here. So this is the penthouse going all the way up to here for 30 Perry Street and then our double height space at 34 Perry Street. So these are, I'm not sure if this isn't lining up here, but these are our views from streets. Like I said, we've got tall, there we go, thank you very much. Got nice tall buildings on both sides, so we're able to mask any view from the public thoroughfare. You can even see that there's our addition poking up. There's the existing at 30 Perry Street penthouse that was approved, and the double height space at 34 Perry Street. We're back there, and as you saw on the, we're maintaining the rear cornice and maintaining the top 3 fenestrations at the rear to maintain the donut. This is just pictures of our rooftop mock-ups that we had up. So this is first floor existing on top with the existing L, and then our filling it in, which again is not lining up here, but maybe you can see it up there. Second and there you go, and then second and third floor, just interior work. So then we go to the top floor, our existing roof, and then there's our penthouse with our balcony in the back where we're tucking in our AC equipment, and then there's the roof of the penthouse. And that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Any questions? All right, we have one speaker, Patrick Waldo.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. This testimony pertains to the application that we saw at the Public Review Committee. While HGC appreciates the applicant's effort to restore, HGC asks that the Commission reject this proposal on the grounds that this application is incomplete. The visibility of the proposed rooftop addition is not documented, and the applicant did not make a mock-up on the roof as required. With no photos of a rooftop mock-up taken from the roof or neighboring streets, our committee has no way of knowing how visible this rooftop addition would be. From what is provided in the proposal, our committee finds the rooftop addition awkward and not well executed. We question how such a structure would be supported. We look forward to seeing a revised application that is complete with all required elements and that presents a rooftop addition that is better integrated with the building. Thank you.
Yes, Bernadette, do you want to speak to that?
I'm just going to state that a rooftop mock-up was constructed. It was not visible from a public thoroughfare, so it wouldn't be seen.
Okay, good. And we went out there.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additional questions? Right, Community Board 2 recommends approval, and we can close the hearing. All right, comments? I think it's appropriate too, and I've just found the testament a little odd because leaving aside the fact that they couldn't see the markup, there was a markup, but to say that this penthouse is not integrated into the building, it just seems like a very integrated penthouse. So design-wise and materials, so I'm not sure what they really were commenting on. But are there any concerns about this in terms of the scale? Okay. Right, Kim.
In the matter of 32 Perry Street, Greenwich Village Historic District, a Greek Revival style row house built in 1845. Application is to construct a rooftop addition and alter a rear addition. I note that the style, scale, materials, and details of the building are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant historic architectural features or be visible from any public thoroughfares. that the rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades, and the rear addition will not extend to the top floor of the building, maintaining a sense of the building's original massing, that the existing rear addition will only be modestly enlarged, and its projection will approximate the depth of the rear additions at adjacent properties. Therefore, it will not diminish the central green space, that the rear addition will feature a solid to void ratio and horizontal band between floor levels, which will be compatible with the residential scale and character of this row house, and that the work will not diminish the special historic and architectural character of the Greenwich Village Historic District.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Application's approved.
The next item, Commissioners, is item number 7, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 18-2629, 136 Dean Street in the Borum Hill Historic District, Block 195, Lot 4, an Italianate-style row house designed by Patrick Fitzgerald and built in 1869 to 70, and the application is to construct an areaway.
Good morning, Commissioners. Karina Bishop, Preservation staff. The application before you is 136 Dean Street, located at the corner of Dean and Hoyt Streets in the Borum Hill Historic District. The proposal is to construct an areaway which will extend along the Hoyt Street facade and in front of the carriage house at the rear of the building. The areaway will feature planting beds and ironwork to match the existing ironwork at the primary facade on Dean Street. The areaway will project 3 feet into the sidewalk and be set back 10 feet from the primary facade and crosswalk. These distances were stipulated by the Department of Transportation in order to obtain revocable consent. The architect, Jeffrey Prisco, is here to present.
Thank you very much. Again, Jeffrey Prisco from Brutus Park Architecture. As was mentioned, this is an Italianate townhouse built actually with the 2 adjacent properties in the right slide. So they were kind of called the Three Sisters. And over the course of time, they've held some of the characteristics and some have been lost. But unlike the other 2, as you can see, the ground floor of our building was originally a retail space. So we did not get any front yard fencing or any side yard fencing. Being that we are in the northwest corner of the Borum Hill Historic area, we are the only townhouse that actually does not have some sort of protection or fencing that wraps the corner and runs down the side street. As you can see, top side is existing, which is just sidewalk which runs directly up to the face of the building on Hoyt Street. So we are pulling back, giving a planting area. Originally we tried to tie the planting area on the side to the front yard, but DOT requirements for the corner quadrant would not allow that. So we actually have the initial existing front planting area and then a side area that starts 10 feet off of the corner quadrant as per regulation. That is what it was look like from Hoyt Street. And again, we are proposing to match the existing fencing. Even though the fencing is not exactly of the historic nature, we thought it was better to match the non-historic than have 2 disparate fencing for one property. This is shots of our sidewalk, and as you can see, without any fencing or planting area, it looks pretty barren, and it allows people to walk up right to the windows. That is the area of the historic district, and we are the red corner there. And we have photos of all the others. Here, again, going down our street, top 2 slides are going down Hoyt Street to the south. Again, a carriage house and a brownstone on the corner, and then a couple of others where you see, actually the 2 bottom slides are not in the historic area, but they are adjacent to ours. One across the street, one catty corner. Again, working around the historic area, these are various types of corner enclosures. Almost all of them with fences, and one of them coming up is actually a walled off section. So as you see in the bottom left slide, that
is kind of an outlier where their corner protection is an actual wall. Everywhere else, fences of various types, not many of them historic. And this is just regarding our fencing. The top 3 slides are the 3 fences from the 3 simultaneously built townhouses, and you can see that all 3 are different. Not sure that anybody's really original. And the bottom 2 slides are of the existing fence that we are going to replicate. And it is seen throughout the area, both in the historic area and in the adjacent non-historic areas. And I believe that is it.
Okay, are there any questions? All right, are there any speakers on this item? Any speakers? Community Board 2 recommends approval of this application on the condition that, excuse me, the design of the new fence, excuse me, match the existing, which is what you're planning to do.
Yes.
Okay, good. Do we have any other questions for the applicant? Yes.
Did you think about all running the fence all the way around to meet the front fence?
Actually, that was the original design, but Department of Transportation.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Squashed it.
Yeah.
What they actually require is, this is called a corner quadrant.
Yeah, sorry.
Actually, it's the corner of the building, so we have to be 10 feet off.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
We did try for that, and we would fight it, but they seem like they would win. Didn't seem like
They always do.
Okay, if we have no other questions, we can close the hearing.
So moved.
Are there any concerns? It seems completely appropriate. Okay, Michael?
Regarding 136 Dean Street, the Borough Historic District, the application is to construct an areaway. I note that the building's scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Borough Hill Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed areaway will not eliminate any historic paving material at the site and will not obscure any significant architectural features of the building, that the proposed configuration of the areaway is consistent with the evolution of the Borough Hill Historic District, where a number of corner row houses feature areaways, planting beds, and fencing along their lot line facades, that the materials of the proposed areaway, including concrete paving, planting beds, and metal fencing, are in keeping with the material palette of the building, that the height and scale of the fencing is in keeping with the scale of the facade and will relate to the heights of other fencing found within the streetscape, that the design of the proposed ironwork is based on existing ironwork at the front of the house, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building, streetscape, or the Borough Hill Historic District.
All in favor? Any opposed? This application is approved.
Commissioners, item 8 on the agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 19-11448. This is 158 Halsey Street, located within the Bedford Historic District. It's a neo-Gothic style row house designed by John S. Frost, built circa 1882. The application is to construct a rear yard addition and modify the roof.
Morning, Commissioners. Timothy Shaw, Preservation Staff. 158 Halsey Street is located on the south side of Halsey Street between Nostrand and Marcy Avenues within the Bedford Historic District. The application is for modifications to the roof. Go to the elevation here. This is the existing front facade here. Modification to the roof, including removing a portion of the roof to create a terrace. The attic floor and the roof to create a terrace, and for the construction at the rear facade of a 3-story rear yard addition. Note that the railings at the roof of the, or at the new modified roof, I did view a mock-up in the field. It is not visible from the street. Also note that there is, as shown here, the building here, there is potential for visibility from Marcy Avenue through the block, but it is seasonal. As of now, you cannot see the rear facade of the building. Adam Cahill, the owner, will begin the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for seeing us today. As I was introduced by Tim, we are looking at the front and rear elevation of 158 Halsey Street, a building that my partner Christian and I own. And we are proposing a removal of part of the roof and a 3-story extension. We are doing a full renovation of the property. Just so you know, the complete facade will be restored, including the stoop, new brownstone. In the period, work has already been approved by Landmarks. It is in process as we speak. This is a general view of the rear of the block, showing various extensions of different heights and widths, showing the green space here. This is the section of the roof that we wish to remove. It is what we call, I guess, a cheater floor. Originally, when the house was built, I believe the old adage is that they built these floors that were not visible from the street in order to cheat the tax man, in order to build more of a house without having to pay as much taxes. So as you can see, it's in various states of just being covered up over the years with silver, and there's nothing left detail-wise here other than just a beaten up dormer. You can see the satellite dish. Everything will be removed, and a new roof is will be put on the property. As you see here from the street, that is the condition of the dormer, which is not visible from the road. Currently, as you can see, our brownstone resurfacing is in process. As Tim points out, the building is slightly visible, possibly in the wintertime. During the summer and spring and fall months, really hard pressed to make out the building. And that outline is of the 4th story. So I believe the extension will be even harder to see because it will be 1 flight lower. These are examples of extensions currently on the block. Right here we have a 3-story extension and a 2-story irregular shaped extension. I'm not sure the design of this individual outbuilding here, but our extension will be keeping with the historical fabric of the building and uniformity of windows and composition. To the right here is 162 halls, another full width extension with the deck on top, a wooden deck. That's a few buildings to our western side. And directly behind our project, the 2-story extension as well. These are our current and proposed elevations from the street. You will not be able to view any of the 4th-story additions, but we want to show you exactly how the mass of the building will not be changed from the street. We're simply removing an unusable portion of that 4th-floor attic, which pitches down to the floor, virtually making that space unusable in our property. More of a close-up of the 4th floor opening. Proposed new stucco exterior wall. This will allow a lot more light and air to come into the 4th floor, which is our master floor. Current and proposed rear elevations showing the existing 1-story out power building extension that's going to be removed, and our 3-story, I believe, period appropriate extension here with windows, railings, and staircase down to the garden. The original mass of the building will be staying on the 4th floor, just to be clear about that. Current street elevation to show in comparison to the buildings on our left and right. As you can see to the right of our building at 156 Halsey Street, it is a 4-story neo-Grec property. Just showing that on the block there are varying sizes and shapes of houses. And that with our removal of the 4th floor attic roof space. Again, existing 1-story full width extension on our immediate left, and the building to our right at 160 Halsey Street. Proposed, believe it still keeps in the spirit of the rear of the property. These are existing conditions. As you can see, the sections in shaded blue will be removed. I believe the blue. That is the new process. So we're simply removing the roof from the front of the building, allowing more light, air, and ability to walk out into the outside. With our 3-story extension in the rear. Current block showing green space.
Could you hold on to that slide? Are there any other full-width 3-story extensions in that donut?
On this block, there are 2-story full widths and partial width 3-story extensions.
But no full width 3 stories?
Not
right?
a full width 3-story.
Okay, thank you.
But there are, as you can see, multiple outbuildings and a cluster of extensions on the Macon Street side. In terms of massing, I believe we should still be protected.
The next drawing actually is, oh, yes, this one is, this is better, you can understand what's going on.
We have a 3-story extension, partial width across the street at Macon. Current conditions. After proposed renovation. Closed. As you can see, current line of sight. Proposed, showing it will still not be visible from the street. We're essentially removing something that is currently not visible, but I think it will still keep in character of the block from the street for any passerby. As you can see, we have an orange railing proposed for the new railing. Photograph evidence showing that it is not visible. And our current and proposed floor plan layouts. Ideally, what we are looking to do is restore this home into a family home. It's currently a 4-unit property. It's been chopped up over the years. Originally, it was built as a single-family domicile, and we're actually proposing a 2-family layout that will allow a family to live, have a little rental income to offset their mortgage payments, and make it a little bit more affordable to live in Brooklyn these days. I believe what we're proposing is going to give a very generous layout to the family, and working with a townhouse, there's certain, confines and constrictions that make, floor plans difficult. But I believe what we are proposing will make a generous family-sized home.
All right, are there any questions? Yes,
Yeah,
Mike.
what's the back wall made out of?
The rear of the
addition?
It will be stucco.
Stucco over metal stud, over block?
Stucco over a cinder block, so it's going to be an entire masonry structure within stucco, and part of the reason we're doing this is for energy efficiency with the foam.
So it's an EFIS, like an exterior insulation?
Well, there'll be foam on top of the
block.
Yes, and then stucco on top.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have one speaker, Patrick Waldo.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the proposed rear yard addition bulky, oversized, and inappropriate for the pristine block on which this house sits. 3 stories is far too much and far too tall for such an addition. Going full width 3 stories when everything else on the block is half width and 2 stories is a real departure from the interior courtyard wall. Programmatically, the owners of this building do not need an addition on the 2nd floor, and our committee asks that the 2nd floor addition not be extended. More room for their master bedroom suite does not justify an intrusion such as this. Furthermore, we find the proposed material, stucco, inappropriate. Any new addition should be brick and should be similar in texture to what is present in the existing neighborhood. Our committee would like to see the 2nd and 3rd floors restored. so that this building can contribute in a harmonious way to the donut and maintain the building's relationship to the other houses in the row. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? All right. Community Board 3, Brooklyn, recommends disapproval. Their suggestions are to reduce the size of the rear extension to 2 levels and not full width, eliminate the alterations to the top of the building, and let's see. And because of excessive bulk as well as inappropriate alteration to the existing historic gently sloping rooftop and dormer, which is visible from many vantage points in Bed-Stuy. So that's, yeah, can you speak to that? The dormer, yeah.
Because Adam was saying that it's not visible. It is visible. It's not really visible right now because of the netting that's there. The dormer is visible, but it's minimally visible. It's not, you don't see the full size of it. But it is something you do see from the street. You don't really perceive the sloped roof. That's what we have as evidence from the designation photos of relatively recent designation.
Okay.
Do the adjacent buildings have those cheater sloped roofs as well?
Yeah.
They all do?
Yeah. Most of the houses on the block have that. I mean, you see it's here shown as visible in the line of sight. But I can confirm that this portion is not visible from the street. I walked all around. You don't see this railing where this roof will change.
Just one other question. So, and do the other sloped roofs in the adjacent buildings, do they have dormers?
The majority of the houses in this row have
those little dormers, and they're equally visible, all of them?
Yeah.
Some have been raised to include the 4th floor, though.
Do you have any pictures? Do you have any photographs showing that?
I think the
Oh, it's in the.
I mean, you can kind of see in this view. Sorry, you can see dormer. These little dormers there. This one, yeah, as he notes, there are a few houses that have been modified. I think these 2 have been raised, and the one immediately adjacent was increased.
6 dormers on that block, which is less than half.
So you see here.
Where's the dormer?
But you can see a dormer right there.
Oh,
there are different, some of the buildings have this bay, but it's dormer's right about there, and the neighbor. It's not super prominent, but it is there.
As you can see, you can only see a small section of it. You don't see the roof at all. So what we're proposing is actually removal. It would be. I don't think anyone would notice from the street if it was ever there in the first place.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? All right, we can close the hearing.
So I have a question about that. And the question is, is this half floor, this tax avoider half floor with its dormer, an important architectural feature in that it allows us to tell the story of a time when, this was a practice? And does, the fact that there are adjacent dormers make it more important to keep it or less important to keep it? I don't know yet, but I'm wondering what others think.
Okay. Yes.
I'm personally okay with the removal of the dormer since it's not a visible feature. I think it is a kind of a charming artifact, but I don't think based on what we've approved in the past in terms of other modifications of elements that are not visible from the street, I think that this would have to be considered appropriate. I do think that the back addition should go down a floor. The bulk of the additions on this block are 2 stories or less, and none of the full width ones are higher than 2 stories. And I think the structure should be brick. They can paint it whatever color they want, but we've been pretty consistent here in not going for exterior foam stucco finishes in historic districts.
I would agree. I think that at the rear, they really should take down a story, because if you look at this, the map tells it all, and in fact, they really go beyond what exists within this context. The 3 stories are either, they're all not full width. I think that's the real difference, and they're in fact a minority within this block. So I would completely concur with Commissioner Goldblum on that, and in terms of the material as well. I'm okay with the dormer being removed as well. I think it's just, at least based on the views that you see, I think it's not really visible enough to kind of be, to tell that story.
That was the point, right? Not be visible.
To tell the story in secret. To whisper, how about that? It's very modest. But still, I think the block is varied enough. There'll be some dormers that remain. And does anybody have a concern about that? Yes, Michael.
With regard to the dormer, I think I do agree with Adi. I mean, these things are important artifacts. However, looking at this one and considering the amount of, for want of a better term, the garbage that's been loaded on top of it, and the fact that it's wood framed, I'm sure it would have to be totally reconstructed, and so we would have nothing. I would like to, I personally don't consider anything that we do here a precedent that needs to be followed forever. And so if another one came before us that was in better condition, I would be much more inclined to say it has to stay.
Okay. All right, so any other comments? So why don't we recommend, or we'll modify it to remove the 3rd floor, and that they will work with staff on a more historically appropriate material for the rear facade.
In the matter of 158 Halsey Street in the Bedford Historic District, an application to construct a rear yard addition and modify the roof, I recommend approval with some modifications, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant features of the rear facade or rear yard. That the new rear yard addition will be only seasonably visible from Marcy Avenue and will be seen within the context of other visible rear yard extensions at other houses on the block. The design of the proposed addition with a stuccoed facade and punch window openings will retain the scale and character of the house. That the new rear yard addition will not extend further into the rear yard than the existing rear yard extension and will be in keeping with the depth of the other additions within the block. Therefore, its depth will not overwhelm the rear facades of any other buildings, nor will it further diminish the central green space. That the existing dormer window at the front is a simple utilitarian design, and its removal and the demolition of the pitched portion of the roof will not result in the demolition of any significant architectural features of the building. And the alterations to the roof and the railings and AC units will not be visible from the public thoroughfare and will not detract from any significant architectural features of the building or streetscape. Pardon me. However, I find that the interior of the block does not contain other 3-story rear yard extensions at other rear facades, and therefore the proposed height of the addition will overwhelm and detract from the rear yard context, and that the stucco finish for the facade is inappropriate. Therefore, I recommend additionally that the height of the rear yard extension be lowered by 1 floor to 2 stories, and an alternate finish material for the facade be used.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This application is approved. So we will break for lunch and be back at 12:45. Okay, right.
Commissioners, we're going to start with a public meeting item at the end of the agenda. This is docket number 19-10370, 20 Willow Street, located within the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. It's a Greek Revival style row house built in 1846. The application is to construct rooftop additions. This was first presented June 6th of 2017. No action was taken at that time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Karina Bishop, Preservation Staff. The application before you is 20 Willow Street, a Greek Revival style row house built in 1846 in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. The application was first presented at a public hearing on June 6, 2017, where the Commission took no action. The proposal is to construct a shed dormer at the primary facade and to modify the existing gable dormers at the visible rear facade, as well as altering the window openings at the existing rear yard addition. The comments from the commissioners at the public hearing concern the visibility of the addition over the Willow Street facade and providing more precedence for dormers of this type and configuration which exist within the district or throughout the city. Applicants have returned with a revised proposal addressing the commissioners' comments. The height of the shed dormer at the primary facade has been lowered by 6 inches, which you can see here, which reduces the visibility of the addition from Midog Street. And the presentation has been revised to show more examples of visible dormer additions within the Brooklyn Heights and Cobble Hill historic districts. John Hathaway is here to go through those examples.
I make a motion to reopen the proceedings.
So moved. Hello, John Hathaway, representing the owners of 20 Willow Street in Brooklyn Heights. So, as Karina said, we've made modifications to the profile of the front dormer so that, I'm going to come back to that other photo, it is less visible. The orange tape that is on the mock-up is now the height of the lowered profile. You can see how we've noted on this photograph on the right that there was the height we had initially proposed, and then the orange tape indicates the new revised height. That new revised height will, for the most part, eliminate from view any window that is in the dormer. This is the most obvious view of the dormer when the leaves are out. So we took a couple of shots going down Midog Street, specifically right here. This is right where the dormer becomes visible. And, oops, excuse me, wrong way. Oh, sorry. And then this is just a little bit closer. The previous photo is down here. We move right up to this. The corner is up here. And right at that point there, you can see the dormer is now no longer visible. The old profile was still visible at that point, but now with the lowered profile, it is not. Now I'm going to step back to this rendering, which was of a used a photo that was taken during the winter without the leaves. And the reduced profile now makes this dormer not extend above the existing roof line here. So there is no projection when viewed along Midog Street that actually will have this thing visible above the existing roof line. You can see the existing roof line here, and this fits right into the existing roof line. And obviously is very small compared to the adjacent dormer at 22 Willow, which is also visible in this photograph over here. So those are the modifications we proposed, and I want to just show you a few other approved dormer modifications, or additions, I should say. This is in the Cobble Hill Historic District. This is a rear dormer and front dormers that were added to an attic level at 430 Henry Street. That was approved in 2009. This is Cheever Place, also in the Cobble Hill Historic District. 198 Baltic Street, although this was an addition, but we haven't been able to actually locate a permit on that. Within Brooklyn Heights, I took photos of a number of dormers that were added onto center-ridged roofs, typically Greek Revival, that also exist. 16 Remsen Street, this was a modification of an existing dormer. This is Henry Street. Most of these other photographs do show dormers that pre-existed historic designation, or we have not been able to find any permitting for these particular things. This is on Middaugh Street, right adjacent to our house. And then this at 278 Henry Street. And then there are several, this is Willow Street. This appears to be a very new construction, but, I'm sorry. This was modified in 2011. I can't read that. 17? Okay, couldn't read it from this angle. So that was a modification of an existing. 362 Henry Street down in Cobble Hill. Then these are a couple on Monroe Place. You can see these appear to have been modified, but we couldn't find history on exactly when they were constructed. So these are 2 side by 7 and 9, Monroe, and down at 19 also. So, and then this is the rear facade, and if for some reason we need to revisit the rear facade, I can, but the front facade was really the issue.
There were no issues on that.
So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any questions? Okay, we can close the hearing then. All right, comments? Right, I think the issue was whether, there was visibility, so the commission was concerned about the visibility of the dormer, and also the fact that I think the visibility was an issue because I think some of the commissioners questioned whether having a dormer that was visible was appropriate, and did we see that within the historic district or on these building, this particular typology. And so the applicant has looked around both at Cobble Hill, and I think they've, in my opinion, I think they provided us the evidence we were looking for. So along with the fact that they've reduced the dormer, I think that visibility is minimized, and even if you see it, it's not, I don't think it'll detract from the character of the neighborhood. Does anybody have concerns? Okay.
In the matter of 20 Willow Street, Brooklyn Heights Historic District, the application is to construct rooftop additions, noting that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features of the building or the historic district. That the Brooklyn Heights Historic District features a variety of dormers, many of which were added to row houses over time. Therefore, the construction of these dormers will be in keeping with the architectural alteration that have occurred over time in this historic district. That the proposed shed dormers will not encompass the entire width of the roof, maintaining the historic roof pitch at both sides. That the rear dormer will project less than the existing gable dormers, and therefore return the roof closer to its historic profile. That while the rear dormer will be visible along Middaugh Street and from the west of Columbia Heights, it will be seen from a context of neighboring rooftop accretions within the row. That the proposed white finish of the standing seam siding will help the rear addition to blend with the lower floors of the rear facade of the building. That the modest scale of the proposed front dormer, whether visible from the east on Middaugh Street, will not overwhelm the primary facade of the building, and that the neutral gray finish of the siding will help the addition to recede from view. That the removal of the existing fenestration and installation of clear glass awning and hopper windows at the existing rear porch addition will return the rear facade closer to its original appearance as an open-air T porch. that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Brooklyn Heights Historic District.
And all in favor? Any opposed? Application's approved.
Okay, Commissioners, so now we'll go to the last of the public hearing items, and that's item number 9 on the agenda. It's an application for certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 19-10525. This is 459 14th Street, located within the Park Slope Historic District. It's a late Romanesque revival-style row house designed by G.F. Beatty and built in 1891. The application is to replace windows and construct a rear yard addition.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Derek Danner and Preservation Department staff. This property is located in the Park Slope Historic District on the north side of 14th Street between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West. The applicant is proposing to replace windows installed without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits at the 14th Street facade and install simulated double-hung passive house-style windows at the primary facade and at the non-visible rear facade, removing existing one-story addition and constructing a two-story full-width addition. The architect is here to present this application. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Roy Leone from Matter of Architecture. I just wanted to walk you through our presentation. There are two components. There are two components to our presentation. One being the approval of a passive house style window, and the second being the rear yard addition, as Derek pointed out. Again, we're in the Park Slope Historic District on 14th Street between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West. Our project is 459 14th Street. It is one of 5 houses that were built at the same time and have a AB pattern. So you can see the context. That is the existing photo, and that is a 1940s text photo. So we're proposing to replace these windows. And again, front facade, proposed facade. We're actually going to return the windows to the cottage-style windows on the first floor and replace all of the missing historic molding. On the second floor, we are going to install, again, simulated double-hung windows, and again, replace missing historic details around the windows. And these are some details of the passive house style window and the historic details. We're proposing Bewizo simulated double hung for this application. And these are all wood windows, by the way. And the rear, excuse me, our addition is a proposed 2-story full-width addition. It extends to the 30-foot rear yard setback line, which is 13 feet from the existing structure. Within the context of our block, there are numerous examples of 2-story additions and additions that go to this line that, again, is 13 feet from the houses. This addition is not visible from any public right-of-way. So we're really, sorry, and this is the existing context. And this is our addition. We're going to construct the facade using old brick to have it blend more seamlessly with the context. Again, using wood windows in the rear addition, and making a change to the top floor, allowing for patio doors, and again, replacing the single window to the right. We'll also be removing it's sort of a cementitious paint on the back of the facade and returning repointing and restoring that brick. So again, you can see the context and the other additions that exist currently and our building in that context. And again, it's not visible from any right-of-way. Thanks. Sure. I guess I'm sorry about this. Derek just wanted me to point out the windows on the top floor on the front facade. We're proposing double hung, again, simulated double hung on that top floor, which is not actually consistent with the tax photo from 1940. You could see on the left and right, it looks like they had the cottage style windows similar to what happens on the first floor, but that condition doesn't exist on any of the houses currently. So we felt that it was more in keeping with the block to stick with the simulated double hung rather than the cottage style on that second floor. And again, I apologize for not pointing that out sooner.
Can I just ask you, sorry, how deep are your rear yards?
I'm sorry.
How deep are the yards? Is your lot 100 feet?
It's a 100-foot lot.
Okay, and after your extension, how much of the rears will be retained?
30 feet as of the zoning resolution. It's exactly, yes.
And actually 30 feet? Okay, just.
Yes, there's a dotted line there that shows that, and you can see many of the additions already go to that line. That's essentially what set the depth of the addition.
Okay. Are there questions? We have several speakers. We have several speakers, and each person will be given 3 minutes. The first speaker is Jackie Pou de Vallon.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing our testimony today. My name is Jackie Pou de Vallon. I'm a preservation consultant. I have been hired by members of the 14th Street Block Association to study this proposal and to give testimony today. Accompanying my testimony is a handout with images that I will be asking you to reference, as well as a copy of a permit. Based on existing conditions within the block and the proposed addition size and design, it is my opinion that the scale of the addition would not be in keeping with the majority of additions within the block, nor with the residential character of the rear facades of this house or its neighboring houses within the row. Furthermore, it would compromise the house's relationship to the rest of the houses in its row, which retain their original one-story kitchen additions. Lastly, it would constitute an incursion into the green space in a block where no comparable additions exist. 459 14th Street is one of a row with 453, 455, 457, and 461. Historic maps indicate that this row and all of the houses within the block originally had one-story kitchen additions, or Ls, at the basement that extended half the width of the rear facade. These original rear Ls remain largely unaltered throughout the block, including at 459 and at the other houses in its row. The interior of the block, or donut hole, is remarkably pristine in that it is characterized by predominantly flat, unaltered facades with one-story Ls on both the 14th Street and 13th Street sides. There are no two-story full-width additions in this block. The addition that was approved by LPC at 467 14th Street is incorrectly shown in the presentation as being a two-story full-width addition. The permit clearly states it is a partial width, two-story addition. It has a full-width masonry terrace at the top floor, which is supported by a masonry pier. A copy of that permit has been provided to you. Included in my handout are images of the approved design and the best photos that I could manage. To reiterate, 467 14th is not a precedent for a comparable rear addition approved by LPC because it's really only a rear L with a full-width terrace on top of it. Also, they're also misrepresenting additions that are farther to the east, which are 2 stories. but are also half-width additions. They're Ls, they're not full-width additions. And that's on the 14th Street side of the block. Regarding the scale and massing of the addition, while a proposal for a two-story full-width addition is generally unremarkable, in this case its scale is not in keeping with the historic L additions within the block, nor with the reduced size of additions that were approved at staff level. Given the lack of additions on the neighboring houses in its row, the proposed addition would disrupt the historic relationship of these rear facades. The extent of the addition's reach into the rear yard, plus rear deck with straight stair, would surpass any other mid-block incursion into the central green space. Regarding its design, while a few houses in the block feature enlarged window openings at the rear, the amount of glazing in the design would far...
Ms. DeValla, if you can...
I'm wrapping up. This is my last two sentences.
Okay.
Where was I? The amount of glazing at other rear facades would not be consistent with a pattern of predominantly punched openings. The amount of glazed area is excessive and lacks a hierarchy of fenestration, and therefore would detract from the residential scale of the house and its relationship to the rest of its row. Overall, the rear facades of the houses within this row and this block are remarkably unaltered, as is its green space. I therefore urge the Commission to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Jonathan Fuchs. And that's not the order? I've just been given this. I'm taking it in that order.
No, it's fine.
Is that okay? All right. Okay. Jonathan Fuchs?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon. May it please the Commission, my name is Jonathan Fuchs. I am the co-owner of 457 14th Street, Brooklyn, New York, which in this photograph is the property immediately to the right of the property with the proposed change. I grew up in this house. We moved in 1972, and I had a very happy childhood in this house. I'm here today not to speak for myself, but on behalf of the Secretary of the 14th Street Block Association, who gives his apologies for not being here personally. He's attending a funeral of a close friend, and he has asked me to read a statement to you. And if it may please the Commission, the Secretary of the 14th Street Block Association, his name is Michael Padwy. He says that my wife and I have lived and raised our family at 453 14th Street for the past 39 years. 453 14th Street is one of a row of 5 houses from 453 to 461, built in mirror images of one another in 1891 by Brooklyn architect G.F. Beatty. These 5 Victorian row houses should not be radically changed in appearance. The proposed backyard extension to 459 is a 900 square foot, 2-story high structure that is approximately 20 feet wide by 13 feet deep into the yard. The structure has a 42-inch high fence on the roof and a full-width 6 to 7 foot deck on the first floor with a steel stairway going further into the yard. This is like adding a small house onto the larger house. My son built a tiny house of 144 square feet, so I know what a house addition 6 times that size will look like. This is extreme for the Park Slope Historic District, and our block in particular, with its open, common backyard spaces. The back walls of the buildings on 13th Street and 14th Street that face each other all have a similar late 19th century, early 20th century look about them. They are all brick and have similar fenestration. Many of the houses on 13th and 14th Street that shared the common views and green spaces of our backyards have at least 1-story extensions. The large expanse of glass and the amount of metal in the proposed addition give this building the look of a modern commercial establishment. The light emitted from this type of fenestration would be nothing less than light pollution for its neighbors. The size of the proposed extension on 459 14th Street would negatively impact not only the immediate neighbors in terms of light blockage by having their yards hemmed in on one side by a large wall where there was once open space, but would also adversely affect the quality of life for all of us who share this valuable open space, views, and greenery.
Okay,
which
Mr.
can-
Fuchs, your time is up. If you can just
Yeah, I just have
try
two more sentences.
Well,
that's
that's
it. Two more sentences.
it's one more sentence, and then we're going to move on.
We encourage the commission not to approve this proposal. A large construction of this type is both inappropriate to the neighborhood and historic to our landmark district. If this is allowed, it would be anything but sui generis, but instead likely to be repeated, as our common and precious resource of open green space will quickly disappear altogether. Thank you, and that is on behalf of Michael Padwee, the Secretary of the 14th Street Block Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Samuel Hagan, and can I please remind everyone that it's a 3-minute period, and then the buzzer will go off, and please respect that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sam Hagan. I had something I was going to read to you from me, but my wife asked me to read her letter. So if you'll indulge me, I'll read it forthwith. Dear Commissioner and Commissioners, my name is Christina Hagan. In early 1973, my late husband, Bernard Fuchs, and I bought 457 14th Street between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West, one of the houses adjacent to 459, and moved there with our 8-year-old son, Jonathan. But for the kitchens and bathrooms, the house was and remains unaltered and as original and pristine in all respects as it was built as one of 5 in 1891. I believe 461, the other house adjacent to 459, is similarly historically intact. I now live in the house with my husband, Samuel Hagan. Jonathan grew up and played with several children who are still friends and now themselves married with adult children of their own and still live on the block. Many of us have known each other for decades. Many of our friends and neighbors, some multi-generational, and now in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, have lived on 14th Street for most, if not all, of their lives, as did their forebears. My family is the third owner of the house that was built in 1991. Without exception, we all cherish and share our enduring love for our beautiful block and have sincere mutual respect and affection for each other. Above all, we love and cherish the serenity of our cherished backyards and the serene, bucolic vistas of space and greenery that surround us on all sides, not to mention the frogs, birds, and annual arrival and departure of the monarch butterflies. For years, I and some friends and neighbors have grown and cultivated scented trees, or butterfly bushes, as they are more commonly known, to attract these butterflies. Each spring, the air is filled with their song and chatter of bird species, etc. When I look out of my second middle floor, when I work on the third floor, whether straight across towards 13th Street or to my right or left of 14th Street, I see a largely unobstructed, glorious green park-like setting of well-tended gardens and stately old trees, several older than the houses themselves. Among them, for example, in the garden that almost faces ours on 13th Street is a majestic oak tree that is easily 100 feet tall and 70 feet wide. 2 houses to my right, in addition to the annual glorious display of azaleas and other spring flowers, there's a large, old, magnificent magnolia tree with beautiful white flowers. The majority are surrounded by unobstructed beauty of the Victorian houses. Many 14th Street residents have no sheds or extensions of any kind. A couple like myself have small, unobtrusive, 1-story, 6-foot by 7-foot sheds built years ago. That same scenario also applies to our 13th Street neighbors who face our backyards. They too have well-tended, beautiful gardens, but no shed or extension, at least none that is visible to me. A more extensive description and photographs has been or will be presented by preservationist Jacqueline Pugh-Davalian. Last paragraph.
Sorry, not last paragraph. I think you're going to have to read one sentence in that sentence.
Last sentence? Yes. Unfortunately, it's the same thing. 1 paragraph, 1 sentence. Appropriateness permitting, in stark contrast to this bucolic interior, the new owner of 459 14th Street, the house immediately next to ours, seeks a certificate of appropriateness permitting the wholly inappropriate construction of a massive, ultra-modern, sun-blocking, 3-level, 20-foot glass steel extension.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, your time is up. Okay.
Listen, thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker, please don't force me to cut you off next time. So Walter Kane is the next person.
I would have given him my 30. I'll try and be a minute. I have 2 letters here, one from Brad Lander, our local city councilman, and one from Bobby Carroll, our local assemblyman, which in sum and substance reiterate the CB6 recommendation that this application be denied. My name is Walter Kane. I live at 461. I've lived there about 11 years. This is a very, very big project for our block. If you can see, mine's 10 feet by half the house. It is going to overwhelm what is, generally a very, very nice space in the backyard for everybody. And so I hope I did a minute, and I appreciate all your service. I understand this is a tough job, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And could I give this to somebody rather than read it? I didn't want to waste your time. Does everybody have?
Actually, the commission has received those letters, but you can give it to Lauren, who's sitting at the table. Okay. The next speaker is Marilyn Bloom.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Isley Bloom, and I live 2 doors away from the proposed work that's going to be done. I have no written speech. I have an exhibit, Exhibit A, which is the New York Times from this Sunday, and it's saying about our backyard is an oasis, which it really, really is. I live there on 14th Street in that house all my life. I know all the nooks and crannies of the block. My father was a landscaper for my backyard and who worked for the city Department of Parks. He designed my garden so that it would be flourishing 9 months out of the year. With this proposed jutting out of the stories, the gardens will be lost. It will take decades of work that we have done and thrown it down the drain, because just by putting up fences, the rose bushes, the azaleas, the magnolias will not flourish and bloom. A shadow cast will cause great disruption. The outdoor space is a very rare commodity in Park Slope, and it is highly desirable, not to build on, but what was also in my day, growing up and raising my own child here too, as well as being raised here, it was a safe space to put the kids in the backyard. And what destruction can they do except maybe break a neighbor's window, which you hope not. But it was a safe place for our children. It's got to stay that way. It's not monkey bars. I can go through a collage of pictures because of the great light in the backyard. And by the way, that's my magnolia tree that they talk about. And the botanical gardens have been in my garden, admiring my garden. I'm my landscaper. Chris is her own landscaper. We get out there. We got dirt under our fingernails from doing our own garden. But I can show you dance recitals, graduations, weddings, everything that's been done in our backyard. And it would be a sin, it would be a mortal sin to have something coming out so far and taking away the light from our garden. Thank you. Under 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice of you. Christina Hagan. Would you like to speak? Christina Hagan? Oh, right, I know. Okay. And he's already spoken, I think. So I think he already spoke. Thank you. The next speaker is Christopher Goff.
Christopher Goff.
You'll get a chance to speak.
Christabel Goff for the Society for the Architecture of the City. The design of this rear yard addition is profoundly out of place in a Park Slope garden block. The massive plate glass windows do everything to accentuate the excessive bulk, determined, it seems, by an interior modernization which is wasteful of the existing space and will no longer appear modern in a few years, if indeed it does now. This item calls for modification. And I'd like to add one of the saddest things about the many years I've been testifying here is the groups of neighbors who come in to tell you how wonderful their garden centers are, and the plants and the birds and the butterflies and all the rest of it, and they are always ignored. Perhaps it's not a landmark issue in the eyes of some, but it is one of the things that holds Brownstone Brooklyn together. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Patrick Waldo.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the proposed rear yard addition unnecessarily large and inappropriate. There is no precedent for an addition of this size. A more efficient floor plan would provide the applicant with more space on the parlor floor, which at 45 feet in length should be able to work graciously without such a massive addition. Given the small scale of this donut, the full width addition at parlor level is a significant intrusion into the garden space. The scale of this donut will be adversely affected by such an addition. HDC also objects to the second floor of the proposed addition as it doesn't add any significant functionality to the floor plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Cornelius Sullivan.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm a neighbor on 14th Street, about 6 or 7 doors close to 8th Avenue. I concur with all the comments that my neighbors have said about the inappropriateness of this project. I would just like to add one other thing. In addition to the environmental and the horticultural and the social aspects that would be downgraded because of this project. And my point is that I think to advance this project would be just to sow the seeds in the real estate community of Brooklyn and many other of the communities adjacent to us, that now you can essentially make a bigger house, make a Manhattan out of Brooklyn, and I think that would be a real deleterious thing to happen to our community and others in Brooklyn. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? Are there any more speakers? All right. We received Community Board 6's recommendation, which is to deny the application. We also received letters from Councilmember Brad Lander and Assembly State Member Robert Carroll in opposition. And we also received 9 letters from the community in opposition and a petition from the 14th Street Block Association with 28 signatures in opposition. All right, but do you want to respond to any of these issues?
Just a few clarifications. First of all, the addition is 520 square feet, the proposed addition, not 900. It's a 2-story addition, 13 feet, extended 13 feet by 20 feet. And again, just to reiterate, you know,
but is there a basement level also?
No, it's basement and first floor.
Oh, just basement. Okay,
basement and first floor, yes.
Okay.
So, and again, just to point out again, there are numerous extensions, and I understand that there are 1-story, but there are some 2-story. You know, we are really trying to be within our as of right zoning allowance, and to do something that, frankly, is modest. I know it's not everyone sees it that way, but. And the only other comment, this is not a kitchen addition. Actually, I can't speak for the other houses because I haven't been in them. But the addition, the single-story little shed that exists at 459, it's not in a kitchen addition. And I believe our neighbor at 457 said that's a shed as well. So I don't think there is that consistency that was presented.
Quick question. The porch that you're showing there, how does that relate in terms of the other buildings on the block? Are there a lot of other ones that intrude beyond the line that you made as kind of the typical line for the rest of the additions? Are there other incursions that go beyond like that?
I have to say I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't recall all of the other extensions and what each one is. I apologize. I will say volumetrically, or at least height-wise, we're trying to keep this lower with an open railing as opposed to a masonry addition here that goes the full width and even taller than ours. So.
On that subject, sorry. On that subject, could you, on L10, I was a little confused. At least some of the testimony was suggesting that some of this is not accurate. Could you just go through what, where full width additions of 2 stories exist?
Sure. The darker magenta are 2-story additions that we saw from our roof and in using Google Maps and other things. So there's one there, one there, one there, one there. Oh, sorry, missed this one. This one's actually quite shallow. I don't know, but and the others are all 1-story addition, as far as our.
Right, and just to clarify, because I think what we heard testimony, yes. So the enlargement at 467, right, which you've noticed, actually that was approved in 2006 and not 2016. But I think the commentary was that it's a volume which is 2 stories, but if you actually look at the photographs, and the drawing, each floor is not a full width. So the terrace on top is, but not, yep, right. So there's an opening. Can you see it?
Where
so
is
that's
the last page of the testimony.
Yeah, that's sort of that.
I see.
The volume is there, but it's strictly speaking, each floor was not extended to the full width. That was the point that testimony was.
And that was approved by this commission in 2006, did you say? 16.
2006.
I think it was 6. I think that we made a typo.
It's
It's actually
typo.
2006.
And the other ones that you pointed out, do you have photographs of those?
No, I'm sorry. We don't.
All right. Do we have any more questions for the applicant? Okay, so in that case, we can close the hearing. So I think that obviously this block is, some blocks, there are many more intrusions at the rear and multiple varieties. I think this is definitely more unique than some of those blocks. So at least for me, I think that the combination of 2 floors, the full width, and that deck that goes further out just gives me some pause. And I think, just looking at what we have today, it feels like it should be scaled down, or we should have some more information about the other intrusions in the block, but it gives me some pause at this point. Yes?
Yeah, I agree. This is a sort of an addition, even though it's a shorter building than we normally see in a brownstone district, by 1 floor at least. This is the sort of thing we approve all the time. But this is also why precedent is a dangerous thing sitting around this table. In this block, in this donut, with this low-scale building, often making this block, it seems as if it's inappropriately large. And I would agree with the chair's comments that it's too big. I don't know how exactly to change it, but I think certainly the porch that sticks on, even in addition to anything that's within the 30-foot rear yard, which I guess is allowable, but it just makes it even bigger. So I think the thing is just too big.
Right, and just on the deck, I think that clearly, having access to the garden, this is not multiple, it's one unit, right? It's right, so you have access in other ways. It just unnecessarily adds something. So I think that's very easily taken off. But I do think even if it's just the 2 stories, I feel that they should at least, I think you just need to give us more information. At this point, it really doesn't feel there's anything comparable. So if you believe there's something that's comparable, at least we should see that. Other comments? So I don't think we should take any action today. I think if you should document it, but I think at this point, the commission doesn't feel that this is where it's at is appropriate. Okay? So we won't take any action today.